History is a lie agreed upon, and the first casualty of war is truth. But the Four Horsemen stand firm, ready to mete out our own brand of justice and get to the bottom of yet another fucked scenario from the esports industry. Believe it or not, boys, we might be back twice this week for fuck's sake. You know, at the end now, every episode, we're always like, hope we're not back. See you on fucking Thursday. Like, you get how ridiculous is this industry got? And if people don't know as well, there's actually a special significance. See, I'm going to actually do what like Carmack and people who are scumbag marketers do. And I'm going to take an obvious negative, which is you all hoped it was Double Aft or fucking Lena or fucking Path, or maybe if you're stupid, you even thought Reginald himself was the Fourth Horseman. So you're all going to be mildly underwhelmed that it is someone I'm going to have to explain unless you're an old school fan who knows the deep lore of some of the insight, this is obviously Idle Vice. We call him Barry. If you don't know, he used to be a translator on the LCK back in the day over in Korea with Monty. Since then, he's worked as an agent and he's an assistant now at Evolved Talent, and he knows a bit about the law. Keyword, a bit. But well, no,
a bit.
But here's the other reason, though, Barry. Are you ready?
I'm not a lawyer. I'm actually not a lawyer.
By the way, Monty,
he's been to law school.
He is not a lawyer, and secondly, just going to law school does not mean you know a lot about the law.
That's true.
As some of the guests on this show have certainly shown. So anyway, what I would like to say is this is why it's actually a good thing that we have Barry, though, aside from all the insights he's going to give us. Because if people don't know, around 2 years ago, he was the Fourth Horseman before the Four Horsemen existed. He did what's effectively the pilot of this show. Because if you remember when we used to do Summoning Insight back with Cloud9, back in the days when, you know, well, I mean, the joke is that it seems like they fire everyone who's good, so fair enough. I guess we're just not even on a fucking short list on that one, are we? You know, it's just Sven Scare and Jensen, everyone. But anyway, if you remember, we used to do this show, well, Summoning Insight on Cloud9's channel, and obviously, he who shall be named, but will be on this show, Richard Lewis, came on an episode to talk about the TSM Holy War. And we brought him on for an hour. But what's so fucked is, even we were so compromised in esports, it only exists on the Twitch VOD. And we had to memory haul it for the VOD itself on YouTube. So you might even be thinking,
we'll be talking about that on this show.
So don't worry, that topic is not only where Barry first appeared and we did this like setup of us four, literally, but it's even TSM again, for fuck's sake. It never ends, does it? It never. Except, you know what the craziest thing someone pointed out is? This apparently is actually the first Four Horsemen about TSM, though. That is incredible. I don't know how that's possible, but it actually is apparently all the rest of all the topics.
It's full circle.
It's wild, isn't it?
That can't be right.
We haven't done that many, to be fair. I think we're going to do like 10 or something, haven't we?
Right,
also, to be fair, we were waiting on the outcome of the Reginald investigation.
That's true.
Do the Four Horsemen on
it
that
was inevitably will come in eventually, yes, of course.
Yeah. It was going to come. We just didn't know when.
Very thorough Reginald investigation.
It's still going on. It's still going on, guys. I know it hasn't. Actually, that's not true. I should say it's possible that it ended in the last week, but as of a week ago or so, it was still.
Here's the weird thing, Monty. Because the LCS Commissioner himself, on the case we're about to discuss, rushed to the Reddit comments to explain it wasn't about match fixing, I can only assume Reginald might have match fixed. Because he didn't do that on Reginald's case, did he? See, dickhead, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. You can fucking join an episode. Mate, how inappropriate is that? Like, I get in a way he's doing it, like, you know, the specific case that we've investigated. Don't worry, it's not match fixing or whatever. But it's like, if you actually find out some of the things we're going to talk about, it might be worse than match fixing. If you actually look at what we're talking. So I found that whole thing just mad. Because again, look, it's one thing if you come and you go, look, this is what the case is about. Why are you telling us what it's not about? When the investigation hasn't even been completed.
What would implicate the league, right? This doesn't necessarily.
But the thing is,
that's irrelevant. He can't know if he's match fixed or not, mate.
Yeah, the thing is that the kind of borrowing money and like mysterious use of money could, in fact, in theory,
before that. Exactly.
It could be a gambling or match fixing scandal. It could be.
We're talking about moving massive sums of money to players who have bank accounts potentially in other countries. Oh, that could never be match fixing. Yeah, thanks, LCS Commissioner guy. Maybe you should actually sit in the back with a fucking biro pen and a flip pad and just take some notes maybe before you start coming out fucking popping off. Anyway, let's get into this episode. Yeah, go on, Barry.
The commissioner is a woman. The commissioner is a woman.
Okay. Like, first things first. You don't. By the way, hand Barry a fucking medal. Secondly, your mic is actually killing me right now, mate. Is it not doing that? Is it not having a problem for anyone else? It's like when he talks, it feels like it cuts it out a little bit. Like I hear him, but it doesn't. Maybe it's just not close enough or something. Is anyone else getting this problem?
Let me.
It sounds better now. Sounds better now.
Sounds better.
Maybe you're just closer to it though, mate.
Okay,
I think before you were slightly too far out, it was like cutting off like part of the word or whatever. I could see what you were saying, but anyway, yeah. Right, so what we should do first is, right, since Richard wrote the article that this is based all around on Desertor, I would suggest you go and read it. It won't take that long, but if people haven't got it yet, maybe someone could drop in the link. But if you can just give us like a summary of what you've publicly said, Richard, and then we'll go into speculation, the rest of the case and all that jazz.
That is an excellent place to start, Duncan. So basically, a few days ago, Peter Zhang, the coach for TSM, was fired. They put a statement out with the firing to make it clear it wasn't performance-based, although in my opinion, you could have easily just not said any of this and not made people curious, because performance-based issues would have been a justification as well, but
of course.
That's a side issue. And in their statement, it said, we were made aware of very serious allegations of conflict of interest and unethical practices against League of Legends coach Peter Zhang. After an initial investigation, we've terminated him effective immediately, and we are working with external legal counsel to complete a full investigation. So obviously, you see that, you know it's serious, and that's what got me curious. I started reaching out to my source network.
Just the fact that TSM themselves, remember 2 years ago, the show we all did, they just used the word conflict of interest, and they actually consider a conflict of interest something problematic that might resolve in someone being fired from an org. We've done it. I did it. Like, this is my Ozymandias moment. Get all the fucking monitors.
Let me say, you obviously didn't watch Double Lift's stream about this article.
No, I know. Come on.
He literally said on the stream, he was going, I mean, look, what you have to remember, guys, is that the coach has direct influence over these players' employment. And by taking money from them, that's shady. And I was like, oh my fucking God. I watched this clip on stream. I'm like, he's so close. Reach out and touch it. Double Lift.
It's the same Double Lift that people don't know, who not only joined the org his girlfriend was the president of, she then gave him an extension while he was there. Like,
he was conducting roster moves in the same room that he was streaming in, so that he would know.
What's actually also crazy on that stream is, after a while speculating about the reasons for it, if it did indeed happen, Lena comes along behind him and goes, I just want to make it clear that when I was president, Peter Zhang was fully vetted and didn't do any of this. Didn't do any of this wrongness when I was in charge. So anyway, whatever. We'll
How
get
would she know that?
Yeah. just another day. Just another day in the. By the way, also they also criticized TSM after he was fired initially, saying, "Yeah, look at that org, it's dog shit." And then this article came out, and they went, "Well, this sort of exonerates TSM." But let's all just jump to fucking conclusions all the time. So anyway, so basically, I got poking around the edges because, much like the LS firing, I think leaving things vague is worse. It's worse for everyone.
Thank you for speculation every time.
Yeah, exactly. And the severity of the tone of TSM's statement made me wonder exactly what had been going on. So I started going into the story. I reached out to some sources. Sources told me that what TSM believe has happened is that over a period of however long it is, certainly since Yasun, I believe, is that Yasan? Is that the name? Sorry, the academy.
Yasan or something. Yasan, maybe.
Yeah. Since Yasan signed onto the academy team, it's been going on at least that long, where he, according to sources, has been using his position as a coach within TSM for personal enrichment. And when I talked to Peter about it, because obviously I've known Peter Zhang since LMQ, I reached out to him. I said, what the fuck's up with this? He said, yes, I was taking money from that one player, but only him, and it was only $1,000 a month. And that was for another agent, and I'm a conduit for that.
Did he give you a name of the agent?
He did. I'd rather not say it this time.
Yeah, that's fair.
I need to run that.
I'm just curious if there was any actual
he was very forthcoming. Put it this way: if everything he says is true, there's certainly enough of a paper trail to verify it. Yes. I'm skeptical, but we'll get to that as well. So anyway, the other aspect of this was that he was loaning money from players. Now, that doesn't sound terrible on the face of it, but obviously with the power dynamic and the conflict of interest, if I come to you and I'm directly, your job is directly beholden on me employing you or picking you for a team, and I say, give me some money, I really, really need this money, you might feel inclined to give me that money because you're worried about your future. And so, as was also verified by Double Lift on his stream, he was asking multiple people, at least over a dozen, for between $10,000 and $200,000 as a short-term loan to pay for a grandmother's surgery. His grandmother back in China apparently is having a serious surgery that needs to be paid absolutely at the end of the month. But the problem with that story is, it turns out that's not necessarily entirely why he needs the money. Why he really needs the money is, in addition, let's say, to his grandmother's surgery, when Sword Art was in America playing on TSM in a highly scrutinized deal that was very lucrative for the player and very underwhelming for the team, as we all know, Sword Art thought, I'm going to go full baller, and bought an $80,000 car, which Double Lift says is a Mercedes. I don't know anything about cars, so whatever.
80K sounds about right, yeah.
Yeah, which blew my mind. 80K for a car for a League of Legends player. I guess shit really is out of control over there.
I've seen more
He had a
expensive
$3 million a year contract. Yeah,
it's not top in the bucket.
Yeah. So, why you would do that, I don't know, but he did. And he used Peter as a conduit to buy it for him. He did buy it, and then when he moved to Weibo, he said, sell the car for me, Peter. And Peter said, okay, I will. And he sold it for, 75, 80K, close to its original purchase price. Hadn't depreciated that much. Obviously, used cars going up and up because of the an unnamed president. And he ended up getting absolutely rinsed because Peter Zhang decided to pocket the money and didn't pay it back to him. And apparently on the 16th of this month, about that, Sword Art said, look, if I don't get my scratch, I'm going to go fucking public and wreck you. So basically, he was scrambling to get the money. That's what precipitated the loans. The players even got as far as having active wire transfers in place to send him the money. And then somebody tipped off TSM management who said, whoa. Don't give him the money. They put a stop to it. All the players cancelled their transfers. And then the TSM management collared Peter Zhang and fired him for all of the above. Now, there are several questions about this, several threads of narrative to consider, multiple offenses, in my opinion. But I want to make it clear that in the interview I did with Peter, he said, I have not been using the coaching role for self-enrichment. I have not been taking money from all of the players, just Yursan. And I can fully prove myself completely innocent of all of the claims of TSM, with the exception of the Sword Art money, which I've already paid half of back and would have been able to pay back had it not been for my sudden termination of contract. So that should bring everybody up to speed.
He also essentially tried to explain why he would potentially be sending transfers of money to players by saying that he was taking it in one currency to swap it to another one for them, so that essentially they wouldn't have to have to get taxed or get exchanged, etc. He could do them a deal on that. So essentially that's a way to make it, because presumably he's worried that people will have transfers or show the money. So that was his explanation. So basically, in summary, this is a key point I want people to understand at the outset here. People might think, well, what's the show about then? You've already written that article where you wrote it all up. You say both of these aspects. You say that, TSM said this, and then he says he didn't do it. So what are you going to do on the show? Just decide who did it? No, people are missing the point here. Realistically, the two most likely outcomes based on the information we have so far are as follows. Either A, TSM is lying, and they have actually created a whole narrative internally, which they've even given to sources, which contradicted some of the things Peter Zhang said from the person I spoke to. And they essentially are making him the fall guy for things he didn't do, and then maybe some minor indiscretions, maybe he shouldn't be holding money for people or doing these, maybe who can know what he said to the players when they joined the team. There might have been some minor things. There's either that, in which case, by the way, the whole episode is actually about TSM. It's why is TSM the org essentially scapegoating a person, and for potentially quite serious in the context of League of Legends esports, crimes effectively? Or he is lying, and he did do a whole bunch of things that aren't what he said. Obviously, it could be one lie, could all be lies. That part is up for debate. But for example, the source I spoke to originally about this topic not only gave a very different version to this guy, but for example, when he says there, like, oh, it was like 80K for Sword Art or whatever, it's like I was hearing it was like potentially millions that were involved that was going to him, and that he was again operating as some sort of agent. So this is like a really complicated case to me, because it seems like there's almost no real overlap between the two sides. Like, it seems that they're both essentially TSM saying we did nothing wrong. Peter Zhang did all of this, and by the way, not like without us having any understanding it was going on, and he was even behind everyone's backs, and essentially was literally playing both sides of a deal, and players, and potentially, as we say, things like pressuring them, using your relationship with them, like that thing you said earlier. By the way, one of the reasons why someone might loan you money is, what if the whole reason they thought they were in TSM is specifically because of you and the fact that you believed in them, and you know, see what I mean? There's so many angles we can actually go into here that are about more than just this case. So let
me kind of to those people who don't understand why this is a big issue and why it would be a conflict of interest. So there's several different layers to this. Like, once you start seeing that he was like taking your son's money, right? Whether it was going to another agent, he was acting as an intermediary, which is possible, because if you guys don't know, it's very hard to move money from America into China. So if he had a method of doing that, it's certainly possible that he was serving as some sort of, I don't want to say money laundering,
financial conduit.
Financial conduit of dubious legality. Let's say that. Potentially legal, potentially not so legal. We don't know. So he could have been doing things in good faith in that instance. However, as soon as he starts, the problem is that as soon as he starts interacting with the player's money, then it becomes this massive conflict of interest because of the potential for abuse. So I think we can put it in different tiers of what this could possibly be. It could be the innocuous, kind of relatively foolish tier of, he was helping these players move money. He was, trying to reimburse an agent that maybe didn't have a way to receive money from America. And so he was doing it in good faith with the players. Now, we can also ask, why would he not tell TSM about that he was doing that? That seems, if he just said like, hey, your son has an agent, I need to move this money, everybody's cool with it, here's the agent, you go talk to this agent, okay.
Well, I'm missing something, by the way. One, what use is your fucking agent if he can't even get the money for you? Why is someone else getting it? And then two, make a fucking contract. You can write it on the back of a napkin and both sign it. Like, this is people are acting again. This is what we're going to get every time in esports on these shows. People are going to act like we've just discovered the concept of a fucking contract.
Let set up the whole feast, and then you can go again. Like, let him set it up first.
So I agree, but we have to remember that people behave very unprofessionally. Like, I agree with you that that's ridiculous, but it is possible. It is stupid, but possible. Okay, a lot of this is going to be stupid, but possible. There's kind of the medium tier of malpractice that could have occurred, which goes as follows. He is the agent of certain players, which could include the following players: Yursan, Keaduo, Shenyi, and Sword Art, which are the 4 Chinese/Taiwanese players the TSM has had over the last 2 years. And he was serving as an agent of these people in advance. And then he was using his position as a coach to push for these people to be on the roster with the understanding that he would be making part of their salary, which means that he effectively is like double dealing. And that is potentially illegal. It could be fraud.
Yes.
We'll talk to Barry about that.
Yeah, it basically ranges from the initial allegations sources have made are ultimately that it was some sort of pay-to-play scheme.
Yes. So wait. Let's talk about all the different scenarios first. Then the worst kind of scenario that you could get into here is that he went to the players that they wanted. That because we remember TSM went to this boot camp where they flew in like 20 people into China late last year. And as soon as the team decided on these people, he went and spoke to them and said, if you do not pay me a part of your salary, I will make sure you do not get onto this team, and basically like blackmailed them into signing with him or giving him a percentage.
You just phrase it like, if you do, it's up in the air, and if you do give me it, then I can get you in.
Yes.
The problem here essentially is the way TSM's presenting it, their internal people, goes like this. since they would claim to have no insight whatsoever into what was going on, it was all just as it appeared on the face value. They think they've just gone, and if what he says is true, they've used him as a translator, but they've just gotten these players. But the reality they would claim would be that essentially he's tricked everyone. He's maybe gone to TSM and gone, right, and like, what players would you be interested in? And then they say like A, B, C, and D out of like 20 people, let's say. And then he goes to A, B, C, and D, and he goes, you know what, it's up in the air at the moment, but I think I can get you in actually. Like if you give me this, I tell you what, I was deciding between you. I prefer you though, but I think I could get you in. You do that, and then in doing so, you maybe even ask, oh, and he needs 2 million. Oh, you're good for 1.75 million there. You take the 250k from TSM, you take your 20k fee for him, whatever it might be. I'm making the numbers up here. At the end, TSM think they bought him for 2 million. He thinks he was sold 4.75. As long as they never just see the detail, essentially, we're here now, and that's what they would claim potentially in a worst case scenario happened with all these players. So essentially, he would also be a very manipulative individual.
So there's also the other possibility too, which is that because he speaks Chinese, he could have also been taking cuts of the buyout potentially by negotiating it with the LPL or LDL teams.
Yes, exactly.
So there's also that angle to it too. So it's not
my
it's possible that it's not just the salary, but it's also the buyout price.
Yeah, and my understanding, just to add on to that point before you continue, is that one of the reasons Peter was kind of perplexed at the whole situation as it's occurred is that he was given all this autonomy. He said to me he negotiated on behalf of TSM and acted as translator on behalf of the players, which is like mega
of interest in itself. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So
also, I can give a kind of like an analogy because like before I started Evolve Town Agency, I was working as like a freelance consultant for a lot of teams and reaching out to Korean players. So one of the situations I was in was helping essentially a team sign on 2 Korean players. But the thing is, all my compensation I made very clear was coming from the team. And I told the players every single time, like, so because they didn't speak English and they couldn't read the contracts in English, I would explain it to them in Korean. But my recommendation at the end every single time was you should get, if you're not sure about anything in here, you should get a lawyer or somebody that speaks English and then go over it so you have their perspective as well as how I'm representing it to you. So like the fact that like negotiating on behalf of TSM, that's fine. And then explaining the contract, being the translator for that situation, that's fine. But the problem is, I think there needs to have been, like, we don't know if that happened, but at least there needs to have been some sort of encouragement to the player that like, hey, I am a biased source, so I could be misrepresenting it to you, so you should get third-party verification. So. And that's kind of like the situations that I was in that's very similar to this, but I've made very, very clear that I'm on the org side. I'm not on your side.
Yeah. So just to add to that as well, I don't know, from talking to sources, the specifics about whether or not these players were coached by the organization themselves. Because there is a suspicion that actually at that boot camp where all of these Chinese players were assembled, so they certainly had targets, but equally, it seems to me the coach had a huge input in who was going to be acquired and who wasn't. And so obviously this would raise questions, and I do believe when TSM make their official statement, when they come to a conclusion, I imagine this will be part of it, that certainly for the academy players at least, there has been, I don't want to say quid pro quo, but I certainly believe that it's entirely plausible that a coach has gone to them and gone, hey, look, I can get you on TSM Academy. Let's work something out, even if it's down the line. And Peter Zhang is the guy that's essentially decided that these players become part of TSM. And so with that, yes, I agree. There's a lot of shady shit here. I mean, not least of all, by the way, it's almost kind of, it feels like people are reacting to it like it's academic. He just pocketed someone's money, right? Like, because we're talking about the inner workings of the league. But for me, there is a broader question about TSM allowing someone to have this kind of oversight. and no guardrails essentially. And he was doing about 5 jobs at that organization without
You'll
any.
notice also, by the way, he himself hasn't claimed, as you said, he's essentially said I had almost like full autonomy. And it's not like he's tricked anyone. It's not even like from my TSM source. None of them claim that like, oh, and we were like tricked. Like the bizarre thing is, it sounds like this guy was just allowed to operate and do whatever he wanted.
Yes, I mean, again, I don't want to go too much into speculation, but certainly Peter's viewpoint is, there was like Reginald, Walter, Parth, and him.
Mhm.
And so in that hierarchical structure at TSM, he believed himself to be operating with the trust. There was a word that came up a lot when we were talking. He believed he was operating with the trust of the upper tier management, including Reginald directly. And so he's, by the way, just so people know, I'm not saying I believe his story. I think there's way more to it than meets the eye. I don't like to invite speculation or speculate myself, because obviously innocent until proven guilty has to be a standard we adhere to in all matters. But, he certainly feels, like, say, aggrieved and confused, because he's like, I wouldn't do anything to harm the organization. It's not, I wouldn't pick a player that wasn't fit to play for TSM, just to enrich myself or whatever. Every player I've selected is,
I think like
unworthy.
I think though, like the biggest problem that TSM has in all of this is that they gave him this oversight and they didn't constantly check in. Like they told him, hey, you can do this on your own. We trust you to do it, but they still need to check in on the processes of what he's doing. And I think that, like, I mean, we all know how like esports orgs are run by like 5 people like in their basement sometimes. So it's like even with TSM with all their money, like you have people wearing like 5 different hats at any given time. Yep. So it's like they trusted him to do everything that they thought he would do it ethically or like do it properly, or maybe like they trusted him to do it in the way that was most advantageous to them, but they just didn't check in enough on him. But like there's also a language barrier to consider, right? Like I don't know if anybody at TSM could speak Mandarin.
I believe Lena claims that she can.
Yeah,
so
Lena can.
She was there at the time.
In America that claim they can speak another language and they don't. So.
Listen, there's Lena's claims I'm skeptical about it, but I'll give her that one. I think that one might be safe, Like she might have said. Here's the thing, though. What I find mad about this is I feel like this is where, again, TSM fans and League fans in general are going to miss the point. They're going to think if it's the scenario that Peter Zhang did all the things TSM claim, then TSM's off scot-free. You haven't thought it through at all. They gave him all this autonomy with no oversight, no contingency plan, no auditing system, no vetting of any kind whatsoever. We're even now having to speculate. Does anyone else even speak the same fucking language as him? And can they even verify what he's saying? Like, that in itself, by the way, would be insane. Like, it's why I find it so mad as a story. Because either TSM, because here's the weirdest part, Richard, to me, is like, it's like TSM is trying to themselves be like extricated from any kind of blame or splash. But in doing so, they're actually sort of effectively having to potentially take a lot if this all turns out to be true. So no matter what, I think it's gonna splash upon them no matter what, as far as I can tell.
Here's what people... Sorry, go on, Barry.
No, I have a hard time giving too much crap to TSM because, like, if you trust somebody, they've been a good employee, you've known them for a long time, you trust them to do things the way, like, properly, then, like, and there's a language barrier involved. Like, I don't have as much problem with TSM giving him that trust. I think just the issue
they're a company valued at $400 million, mate. You can have a paper trail. Where's the paper trail? They're just trusting. You there speaking. I hope you said the right thing. Fucker. He did do a good job on our team 5 years ago. What are you talking about? It's a $400 million company, Barry.
Also, Barry, I think the other problem here is that the reason why, look, this is
TSM as well, by any chance? What the fuck's going on here?
This is facts. What I'm about to say right here. This is indisputable facts. All right. The upper management of TSM does not have a traditional background when it comes to corporate management. That's a true statement.
True. Yes. Okay. It is an understatement.
It's an understatement. I'm phrasing that very nicely.
I don't even know if they all finished fucking high school. I'll want that for a start off.
That's another way you can say.
Anyone over under on that one?
So when we talk about the leadership of TSM and the structure of TSM, and also what we know about TSM from the report about Reggie's behavior, is that many people were afraid to get promoted. It's true that they have had a tough time attracting and retaining people who work in professional corporate environments. There were statements that came out in the report before when everyone was talking about Reggie, right? Saying that people didn't want to get promoted, that they had a hard time of having upper level employees interact with him because of his behavior. And I think knowing his behavior, it would be difficult for many people who are working professionals to be in that environment. So what this does is it means that Peter Zhang has more control than perhaps he should, and he's doing more jobs than perhaps he should, of which this could be seen as a result. It's a domino effect from the leadership of TSM that potentially created the situation. And that is a fair assessment of the structure of TSM.
Yeah. I mean, and just to add to Duncan's point and sort of push back a little bit on Barry's, I'm not saying that TSM are to blame by any stretch of the imagination, but one thing everyone is going to have to consider, they've massively underachieved for a long time. They've had players that don't look fit to wear the TSM shirt and have played very poorly. And I'm sure TSM are more than aware of this fact. And so obviously it would be a massively convenient scapegoat to be able to say, we had this rogue faction within our company that was, we trusted to scout players, we trusted to select players, we trusted to negotiate healthy contracts, didn't do any of the above. And that is why for the past 2 years, we've actually been underachieving. And so when TSM do release their statement, whenever that may be, my sources have indicated to me that it's pending, they're about to conclude their own internal investigation in the next day or two. When that comes out, everyone needs to be really mindful about that element. That doesn't excuse anything Peter may or may not have done. That's, it doesn't excuse any of the versions of events he's given, which are a flimsy pretext at best and look to be riddled with inconsistencies, let's say. But obviously, whenever, I think about when I covered ESEA, for example, with the Bitcoin mining scandal, even though LP Kane had said on the forums, I will turn the client into a Bitcoin miner and you guys wouldn't know about it. When they got to court, their official version was, man, we had no idea it was a rogue employee. So you always have to be careful about the patsy that takes the fall. The JFK assassination should teach you that lesson.
By the way, I've got a quick point on that, which is, I feel like a part that's also really misunderstood in this particular case is, when you talk about this scenario that TSM's setting it up, that's exactly what Richard said there is, if I had to sit down a bunch of scumbag marketing and PR people in a fucking room and go, right, we've got to reverse engineer a reason as to why it's not really our fault that we signed all these not very well known Chinese/Taiwanese players, and for massive money, which Reginald stupidly already admitted it would cost the same as the double lift Jensen super team we've heard that we could have had with all established names that every fan would want in TSM. Right? How could we do it? Well, the joke is, this is exactly how you'd explain it, where you'd go, well, what happened was I had a trusted employee and it turns out he was lying to me, and when he went to these boot camps and we were having all these good players come, like fucking Chovy, Flandreau, with it, I'm making up names here obviously, he didn't pick those players. He actually tricked us and told us the best players to pick were these ones, that they had the best deals, we took them on, and that's why, guys. So because the problem is they can't get out of the Sword Art one. That one clearly was based on fucking Worlds and Double Lift's request. They've been quite open about that themselves. But the other players, this is actually, by the way, low key if they can pull it off. Their fans would buy this. I think they would eat this up and just believe, that's it. Thank goodness it wasn't Reggie's bad mistake. It would allow essentially you to say, don't worry, the element that brought those players in, he's gone now. So now we can get back to business as usual, which is winning or whatever the fuck. That would be the cynical angle you'd probably take. It's not a bad angle, by the way.
You should just be a PR specialist. You make so much money doing
that. The sad thing is, mate, the sad thing is, I've always thought, everyone tries to make out like I'm evil. You'll know if I'm evil, mate. I'll fucking wreck this scene. I'll make Mark Merrill look like a fucking schoolboy.
Your esports.
I said that makes fuck all to do that. Probably some Thorin's chicks on the fucking Upper East Side of New York could probably do that. Fucking hell.
Thorin's actually incredible at esports PR for everyone except for Thorin.
Yeah, the joke is I just don't follow him on ice. Yeah. I'm so expensive, I can't afford myself. Yeah.
He's kind of like the Joker in that sense.
Exactly.
You get something, don't do it for free.
Exactly.
And don't do it for me.
Very cheap. That's my problem. Richard's talking by myself.
Oh, God.
Right, get into them. What topic should we go into, Monty?
It also doesn't have to be like some deep, like here's something that could happen, right? If they are looking for a scapegoat, they could have found that Peter Zhang was, taking this money from Yursan and then sending it to China. And his story could be 100% true, but they can still scapegoat him because they've now introduced the speculation that he was the puppet master behind this bad roster. And they never even have to say anything. As long as the fans can justify it in that way to themselves, then they win, right? So they don't even have to do anything super insidious. They can just be vague in a situation that is objectively a conflict of interest, and he should probably be fired for, trying to move around his players' money, because we don't know how deep that goes. And we can't know how deep it goes because these could be Chinese bank accounts. Like, are we ever going to get access to those? Or even if he has American bank accounts, unless he's sued, right? Or he's brought, maybe he's brought some fraud or embezzlement charges against him, right? You wouldn't know. You just wouldn't know. So,
by the way, does anyone know? I don't, because obviously everything at the moment is just said on the internet. I don't know which is confirmed. Was it actually confirmed that he went back to China, Richard?
My understanding at the time we spoke is that. So this is another aspect of it.
He's preparing to go back to China.
Yeah, he requested, even prior to being fired, he requested time off to return to China.
Ah, okay.
Which either, depending on how you view it, either corroborates that
old grandma thing, maybe, yeah, of course.
Yeah, or he was going back to China and was getting as much money as he could before he went back to China to essentially do a runner.
If people haven't figured it out, China, not a bad place to go if you're a Chinese native, to not maybe go to a court in America.
Well, actually, another aspect to this people don't realize probably is he's got a US green card.
Oh, okay.
So my understanding is there is a cooperation treaty in place for US citizens and US green card holders with China. If there were any legal action, he could be compelled to face it. Although I'm not sure, again, how specific that would be around civil action, which is most likely.
I find it highly unlikely that the Chinese government would spend the effort to extradite him.
Yeah, but civil action for like a couple hundred, maybe.
Obviously,
he's still in the US right now, and is planning. He'd already planned and made plans to go back to China, and he is going to honor those plans. Is when we last spoke.
Obviously, there's different levels of how serious these things are, and obviously, crucially, I think a key distinction is it a crime in just League of Legends esports or real life is a pretty good distinction to make. I know Riot never makes that fucking distinction. Like, they actually act like Monty, like murdered 50 people or something. Like, believe it or not, he never did anything. So anyway, here's the key thing.
They try to unionize. It's worse in some ways.
I'm already personally very uncomfortable with the idea that, like, the good story version for Peter is that he's holding money for people, exchanging currencies, selling things and then transferring that money. And why aren't you just doing it yourself? To save money, to skip a tax. There's something already about that that's already setting me a bit off like that. I'm not very comfortable with that aspect in and of itself, even if nothing else is the case.
I think a lot of people don't understand that, like, carrying currency into different countries, you have to declare that you're bringing a certain amount, and then if you bring over a certain amount, you end up paying a tax on it, whether that's dollars from the US to China. I mean, like, if you go to Korea, like when I always go back home to Korea, that's like the claims check always says, are you carrying more than $10,000?
Yes, that's the usual
in
number,
currency. Yeah. So, and then, like, if you are, you have to declare it, and then potentially, depending on the amount above 10,000, you get taxed on it. So it's if you're like being a conduit, helping money pass through, like, there's potentially the chance of like weird tax evasion things happening. I know that was a problem when players were going from Korea to China, and they were making they were making huge sums of money in China, but the problem was they couldn't get it out of China without getting taxed again on top of their income tax. So, like, there were like a bunch of random Korean companies that were like popping up saying like, oh, you're going to China? Here, like, they'll pay us into our Chinese bank account, and we'll pay you in your Korean currency. And then obviously they were skimming off the top. Like there's
they were providing a service for a fee. And the other thing they were doing, by the way, is they were paying Korean players in real estate. They would literally like sometimes like buy coffee shops for Korean players
Oh my
and then
God.
just like transfer the ownership to them. So like they were kind of paying them in very weird
Actual,
ways.
like if you're like sending in real estate like that, that's actually money laundering. Like you're actually doing it. at
No,
that
if you
mean,
sign
point.
a contract for a coffee shop, man, it's not money
It would
laundering.
be rich as well. I mean, there's another component to this, which is do Riot. Again, my understanding is Riot are investigating. Do they take a stance on it? Because I mean, it could be viewed as an internal issue. We'll get to what the commissioner said, and how quickly she ruled out things she can't possibly rule out, which is weird. But look, at the end of the day, Riot's got previous on this. They allowed a number of players, including some of the biggest names in the league, to play competitively for money on tourist visas.
Yep.
There's no
years.
getting
For years.
Yeah,
for years.
absolutely.
And then when a new player moved into the scene, in the form of Echo Fox, that the cartel that run League of Legends were worried about, they then back channeled to Riot and said they're doing the same thing we did, punish them, and Riot did. So listen, might want to stay well away from having a stance on this, lest you be found out to be hypocritical and cunts for the millionth fucking time in your garbage company's history. Might want to stay away from it. I don't know.
It was also, by the way, the added bonus that at the same time they were fucking Echo Fox. If you don't remember, Monty also had a player that came from a country called Czech Republic who also then needed the work visa. Then
To be fair, that work visa was in process already.
but he couldn't play the first few weeks. I remember.
It was the same thing with some of the Echo Fox players.
Yeah,
where,
yeah.
like, they basically what they did, and I agree with Riot about this, by the way, is that they required legal work status
Yeah,
for
of course.
players. And I was like, they called me up, and they were like, finish the P1 visa. Said okay, finish the P1 visa, and it was done, and that was
Yeah.
it.
Speaking of Echo Fox, Peter used to work there
That's true.
as the academy
true.
coach.
Team
Yeah, he
Liquid.
did. Yeah.
He's had a
He's
good
been
track
around.
record, hasn't he? LMQ, Echo Fox, now this. Yeah, brilliant. Loving it.
So I want to talk to Richard. Just out of
Yep.
curiosity, let's get to this first. Have you
Okay.
seen any evidence that his story about his grandmother is true?
Right. How to express this. So, okay, right. It is a fact that he had requested to travel to China. It is a fact that I have seen documentation that proves this request was made.
Okay.
But you
Now-
haven't seen actual proof of any kind of medical
No.
emergency.
And I don't know if anyone has, frankly. And
Well,
the
that's
issue,
the question, right?
yeah,
Like,
and the,
how would you get that proof though? Like his
well, I mean,
grandmother
Medical
hooked up-
bills.
yeah, medical
Oh,
bills
well,
would be a
fair
good
enough.
start. Or, I mean, look, honestly, if I know enough about this. I've been in the position where I've had to care for a relative in the
I
past.
don't think they're implying, Barry, that like he's just going to FaceTime and it's just Peter with a fucking wig on. Like, it's Peter's
I mean, that's actually what I'm kind of thinking for some reason.
Why not?
Why
Why not? Why not? That's a great plot for a movie, by the way, Duncan. File that
Shoot
one
it on
away.
chemo right now, guys.
When we
like-
make the esports movie, let's do that and get cancelled immediately after. But anyway, no, I had to take some time off to care for a relative and needed some time off work, right? So I was able, through a doctor, to get a note saying, this person has become ill and will require assisted living assistance, whatever. And Richard's going to do that, and here's why I need some time off work. I got it from their physician, so that's definitely something you can get. Again, obviously, I'm talking from Britain. I don't know what it's like in China, but the other thing that worries me is on the double lift stream, which, by the way, solid gold. I strongly recommend you watch the clip.
Yeah, if anyone wonders, by the way, why don't you guys just bring Double Lift on as the Four Horsemen? Just watch his own fucking content; it'll explain everything for you. And if you can't figure out what's wrong with it, just stay over there. Don't come back. You're where you belong. Okay, you found your speed. Not quite my tempo, but you found your speed.
And look, I won't get into that, but
There's a lot of comedy gold in it. That's what I'll say. It's great.
there is
Okay, you need those types of viewers because they drive up engagement because they'll type about how wrong you are.
And look, I mean, on Double Lift Stream, where it gets interesting is, and it lined up with what I'd heard, is the story kind of kept changing.
Okay.
And that's always a flag to me. So in a past life, obviously, I've worked as, I've talked about this before. I used to be a sort of like trade union rep, a shop steward, I guess you would call it, where, you know, when people were fired or faced disciplinary action, I would need to look at the, you know, kind of message, you know, the reasons for it and the process around it. And often one of the things that would happen when people were fired for taking like lots of time off work would be, you know, they had a dead grandmother on fucking Monday, and then you fast forward like 3 months and it's a Wednesday and the grandmother's died again. And you would go, look, I mean, come on, man. Like you gotta fucking keep that straight at the
Also, a
very
very
least.
famous excuse to give, unfortunately, is like
Yes.
it's usually like someone's birthday or an old relative dies, just obviously because it's just so.
Because
and
yeah.
no one's
it's
going to
just-
question it.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
unlikely you'd think it was a lie.
Well,
initially, yeah, of
exactly.
course.
People typically don't push back on bereavements.
Yes.
So, you know, everyone gets one. And generally for grandparents, a workplace won't ask, you know, for a parent, even,
Yeah,
you won't
understandable.
say,
Yes.
give me a death certificate, will you? Fucking hell, that'd be so inappropriate. So
Yeah.
you're good for a few days off work generally with it, but people have a tendency to slip up. Now, when you start talking about, I got to care after my grandparent and she's got these health problems, first it was a surgery that needed to happen. Then it was a surgery that had happened and the bill was coming at the end of the month. Then it was cancer. Then it was stem cell therapy, which, by the way, those two things aren't mutually exclusive. And it just, you know, it's just a little bit nebulous. Like it's a bit weird and woolly, and you know, you can't really pin down a sort of coherent timeline of the illness or what the illness might be or how much the bills are. And, you know, again, I don't want to invite speculation, but my read is this is a guy who's got himself into debt, not just with Sword Art. And he's trying to get himself out of it. And, you know, I think this is a particularly sympathetic story that you could tell to leverage people's emotions. You know, that's my read, but absolutely it could completely be true about his grandparents.
Yeah, and we don't know the possibility. You know, it could all be. It could all be true, guys. It could all be true.
Yeah.
It could also be a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah.
You know,
You know.
it could be debt for a variety of reasons. It could be various addiction issues that are causing debt, whether that's gambling or substance, or you just don't know. You just don't know what this is. But it is I would say it's highly irregular behavior. And I mentioned this on Summoning Insight, but it does have a whiff of the Sky Williams scandal as well, where he was basically operating a Ponzi scheme to live beyond his means. Which is another thing that could be happening.
I nearly got with that. My old mate Sky.
To be fair, he paid me back. So
so he was asking if I could loan him some money, and you know, I was kind of like, you know, basically what I was thinking was, if I loan him money, does that mean I can't ever get cancelled? And
oh my god, that should cancel insurance right there. Like
I was like, listen, I gave Sky Williams money, and you know, like, no, I'm not that cynical, of course. But you know, I've known Sky a long time, and he was asking me for money for that, and I nearly did cough up the cash, and then a few people came to me and sort of, it was around that time just before that video dropped, so I'm glad I didn't get got with that. But it shows you in esports, you know, there is this thing that goes on where people basically will say, you know, like, hey, you've got money saved up because, you know, you're an esports grifter and I'm an esports grifter. Will you lend me some money? And you go, hey, grifter to grifter, what could go wrong? You know?
So I mean, like the reason why it's like for me with Sky, like, you know, I only lent him $1,000, which was, you know, not, some people got, you know, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars.
I think LS said they lent him a bunch of money, right?
Yeah. So the thing about it was that he tried to ask me for 5, and like I said, I'm willing to do 1 because it's like, don't lend money that you're not prepared to lose forever, right? So I was just like, okay. But the thing about it is that I was shocked at the amount of effort he was willing to go through for this $1,000, because I basically made him prove that he was actually like in the process of making content, that he was getting his like YouTube channel back on track, and it was like a extended back and forth before I did it. So it surprised me. It really surprised me that he would go to that effort. But it just goes to show that a lot of people will go to pretty extreme lengths. And especially if you are, you know, friends with these people and have known them for a variety of years. And certainly like Peter's been in LA for a long time. There's a lot of connections within the esports industry in Los Angeles.
Players generally like him too. Like they like him as a coach. They like him as.
He
a
doesn't have a
person.
bad rep, guys. Like he really doesn't.
Well, let's also add this other component to it, and I don't know if Barry can give a bit more insight into this. I don't want to talk out of school. One of the things that sort of contextually came up a number of times when I was talking to Peter was he's going, I care about these players. They look up to me like an older brother. That means that they'll back me to the hilt. And if we've already seen, I think it was San Yi has come out and said, Peter never took Peter never took my UN. And he, and I think one of the problems that any investigation is going to have is I don't think anyone's going, even if he did something wrong, something wrong occurring and players feeling aggrieved about that wrongness occurring are two very different things. And so as a result, I do wonder if there'll be like an almost protective element where the players probably feel a bit bad that their contact, that older brother figure that they looked up to, one of the primary reasons they're in the org, he was acting like a player liaison on top of everything else. He's the translator, he's gone now. And I don't think they want to necessarily dogpile onto that because of that cultural relationship.
I mean, it could be a bunch of different reasons, right? He's obviously their main point of contact between them and the org because of language barrier issues, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, like they could defend him, and there's also and I wouldn't particularly raise any eyebrows about them defending because like with the Shen Yi thing is that he never took any money from me, so I don't think any of this is true. He's being set up, but then you also have to consider the fact that like just because he didn't do it to one person, it doesn't necessarily mean he didn't do it to somebody else.
Defense. You remember when Reginald got outed for all the stuff we've seen him do? So suddenly everyone seemingly who'd worked for TSM had to come out and go, but that's me because I was never abused by Reginald. Like, what are you talking about? What would the relevance be? But that was it's the same defense, isn't it? It's like,
that's an esports staple as well.
I mean, it's an appeal to emotion.
Yes, but it's also, you have to understand that Shen Yi could have legitimate reasons for denying this if he thinks it's untraceable, which is that if he got on the team in a fraudulent manner or semi-fraudulent manner because of Peter vouching for him and then understanding that there was this kickback in progress, right? If he wants the rest of his contract, why the fuck would he, like, if, he's got a good thing going for himself right now. So there are motivations that these players could have to deny the existence of these financial relationships.
I've heard what happened was internally, someone just said, you're not going to believe this, but someone who speaks Chinese is stealing money in the org, and about half the team just sort of did that awkward, like...
Oh God! the monkey puppet meme.
I was very clever not to phrase it that way. Barry,
I'm cancelled. I'm gone.
You're all right. Somehow you'll get away with it because that's just the world we live in. No, one thing I would say is this though: the point you said earlier.
That's the difference.
I would actually. Well, it depends which New York Times reporter you're talking to, mate, and who you voted for in the last election. So what I would say is this: one thing I find a bit dodgy is I would also have said the same thing. By the way, I've known a lot of players that were in Team Liquid, in Echo Fox, and TSM, and they all, by the way, almost universally all love this guy. He was actually a very well liked person among players, and I'll agree, I've never heard anything negative, but here's the problem with that. You just gave the Sky Williams example. This was one of the most beloved person in the whole fucking community. I thought he was dog shit. I would have just paid him to fuck off myself, but he obviously never rang my number on that one, did he? Probably just blocked one. I fucking know. Go check it. But anyway, just like that, that's the problem though. Guess what? That's what happens with real life psychopaths. Everyone, they're never the person you suspect, because essentially what they're really good at is winning people over and manipulating people. And so listen, that doesn't say one way or the other, but I will say, don't think just because everyone thought he was great, that means he can't have done any of this shit. It actually could be the case that he's just amazing at manipulating, and that's why nobody has a negative sort of review of him. So yeah, the problem with that whole topic to me is this is another part I find weird about this story, is you notice essentially the stuff TSM's claiming he did wrong is only the last 2 years. Like, dude, he's been there for ages. So actually that part in itself is a bit weird to me, Richard, because it's like,
well, they only started taking...
Would he really only start... And it's true, he didn't have Chinese players to get you right, Barry. But the idea that he never tried any fuckery with anyone else until like the last couple of years, spoiler, when TSM's sort of going down the shitter, like, I don't know. I don't think that means one thing or the other. I'm just pointing it out as it's something to think about.
I mean, it's something to think about. I think it's also like, he was put into a situation, and then like the temptation was like, oh shoot, this is something I could get away with, and then there was a temptation there. Yes. So it's like just because like that 2-year mark, I think like obviously is the difference between them like they're starting to bring on Chinese speaking players. So I don't think that like I don't really like think that's like that much of an issue. But like the fact is like maybe because everything I've heard, all my interactions with Peter Zhang and everything I've heard from players about him is that he's a good dude. They like playing for him. They think he's a good coach. But then obviously like it's weird because like with some people like they're good on like a personal level, and then when you get to like the professional like financial relationship, like things just fall apart like immediately because like it's like yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, sorry, Barry. What I was going to add to that is though, so there's this weird thing. I don't think it's accurate to frame it that he has not been doing it for a while, and I'll explain why. So, by his own admission, he said when Yersan signed for TSM Academy, that was when he had the agreement in place to shave some of his salary off. Well, that was end of 2020. So
no, that's the end of last year. Was it not? I'm sure it must be the end of last year.
No, end of 2020.
The Yersan guy wasn't in 2020, was he? I'm sure almost certainly joined last year, at the end of last year.
Was it end of what? Was it 2021?
December 2020, he signed to TSM Academy.
Oh, maybe he did then. My apologies. I didn't know what the Academy squad was.
Yeah. I thought it was end of 2020. They announced the 2021 roster.
Yes.
And
correct.
So,
I see the tweet now.
Yeah. So basically, it was at that point he had agreed. You give me, he said $1,000 a month to pay to another agent back in China. So that on the now infamous account, Reginald Bro, perfect for a fucking CEO of a massive company.
Isn't it? I know.
Reginald said publicly, we caught this within 24 hours. Now, all of this might be true to the loans that he was asking for, but certainly it is not true about Yersan's contract, or indeed any other players that this might be happening to. Peter Zhang only said, it's only Yersan that I'm taking a cut from, and it's not for me. But sources seem to think it's more.
Yes.
And in which case, the framing of we caught it within 24 hours. No, you didn't, because that's been going on for years. So that's a big problem.
A source I spoke to intimated to me that essentially he might have actually like skimmed off millions from the Sword Art deal, which obviously was an enormous deal. And it's another one where, I mean, that deal took a long time to be done. If people remember, that took fucking months, and it was all back and forward. And are they signing him? Are they not? Remember the price? In fact, you might remember this, Monty. The price was too high initially, and then they were arguing like this. Look, the point is, this doesn't mean just because it fits the story, it happened. But it's certainly an interesting thing to think about in light of how it colours what you already know about the actual potential trade negotiations, how they went in the past. I'll also say this as well very quickly, because I know this is it's a line of thinking that people get caught in way too many times when it involves a celebrity or someone they know has money, and it goes like this: oh, it's only 80k or whatever, like this guy was making millions, why would he risk that? Right? You do it because you think you get away with it. You don't do it going, right, but if I do it and then I get caught, the worst punishment, am I willing to accept that? That's not the way criminals think. That is not the way they think. As Barry said here, if anything, it's way more plausible that you just saw an opening and just thought, like in this case, if he's the only one doing all the translation backwards, forwards and representing, you just think, how are they going to catch me? Like, as long as these players, who by the way in this case potentially look loyal to him, as long as they don't say anything, I'm safe, aren't I? And by the way, if the player also can barely speak English and you were the translator, you can also get away with a lot of shit there, couldn't you? Oh, that's all right, I'll just translate what you were saying. Yeah, he says it's all perfectly fine. Oh, I mean, see ya.
One of the speculations that one of the things that Richard speculated was essentially that he was potentially in debt for some reason or another, and maybe that was the point where he's like, okay, I'm in debt, and then this is something like an opportunity that I could do to like help defray some of that. Like it's like it could be just like a moment of weakness that's like snowballed out of control, and that's like a story as old as time.
This is typical like gambler behavior, which is like, oh, I'm in debt, I'm screwed, I'm going to take this money and I'm going to win it back this time, and then I will pay the person back. And it's very suspicious. It's very suspicious because what happened to Peter's money? League of Legends coaches get paid 6 figures. They get all of their food and housing. He was a top person. He was a top 4 person, didn't he claim?
I
That's
can't
gonna
believe
be an
TSM
enormous amount of money.
were underpaying him by any stretch
Yes.
of the imagination. He's been there a while. They got a green card for him. It was kind of weird though. I will say, Double Lift again said in his stream, he's going, if he's earning between 50 and 100,000.
That seems way too low, doesn't it?
Yeah, he's going, how can he not have any money? I'm like,
'Cause I
what,
would-
in fucking California?
But
First
he's
of all,
not
by
paying
the
for
way,
his own housing or food.
No,
That's actually
no,
huge.
Yeah.
no, but the
Also,
problem
I
that
don't
is
think
that is just the Double Lift
understands the
part.
value of money.
Yeah,
super
exactly.
well.
You have to remember, Doublelift is the guy who once came on his stream like, guys, someone's like stolen like 300k of crypto from me. As all like, oh well, and my keys are behind the top. Oh, there they are. Fuck yay! Like, so Doublelift hasn't lived in reality his whole life. Anyone knows his backstory. Obviously, he's never had a fucking job, has he? The other thing is, I just thought I'd throw in there. Reginald is so out of touch with PR and marketing. In an era of toxic masculinity, his fucking name on Twitter is Reginald. No, it was on Reddit actually. It's Reginald Bro. Like, please. If TSM could just stop fucking posting on Reddit. Listen, don't, because it's amazing for this show and all my content, but for there must be some PR guy who's just like, where is he? Is that like the fucking master of dark arts at fucking Hogwarts?
Just as an aside, actually, I'm amazed. I'm amazed actually that the PR on TSM has been so bad, because when I had to reach out and do this story, obviously, I wanted to do this one by the numbers. Very serious allegations involved, presumption of innocence, and I want I want TSM to be as fairly represented in my reporting.
Course, yeah.
It's separate to this. I'll dunk on them on a podcast, but reporting, like I say, it's a sacred world to me.
It has to be.
It has to be. It has to be completely ring fenced off. I do take it serious, So I was like, right, we'll give TSM a chance to respond, even if it spikes the story. We'll interview Peter. We'll do all these things. And I saw a name, and I was like, shit, I know that name. And this was TSM's PR contact. And it's a lady called Gillian Sheldon, right?
Oh, okay.
Now, does that not ring any bells to you guys? See, because I'm terminally online and I love US media. I thought Monty might. Does it? No?
He doesn't read this website.
She is the founder of TMZ.
Oh, okay.
So she's like a media legend.
In a way, she's killing her job then. They're doing some great fucking TMZ content.
I was like, oh my God. So, that's how strange everything is. The founder of TMZ is doing PR as a point of contact for TSM in esports. And it's just brilliant. It's just wonderful, especially when you think about everything that's been going on. She must be pulling her fucking hair out, because think about all the things she knows from the other side of the fence, and then think about everything TSM do. Oh my God. I will definitely be buying her a fucking martini 100%. Like the poor lady,
So one of the reasons why I wanted to get Barry on the show is because he has been an agent and working for an agency, right? And there are other issues with. We need to discuss, I think, what the role of an agent is in esports and what we should be expecting from agents, and how we can avoid this situation in the future. Because even if Peter Zhang, didn't do a lot, obviously the conflict of interest is massive. There's also the fact that you actually have to be licensed to be an agent in the state of California.
In California, yes.
So he was in fact residing and presumably operating as an agent within the state of California, which is another problem. But one of the big issues has been fair player representation globally in esports, and it feels like now we're getting more legit agents in the space. There are new agencies that are starting to come up and try and make this a more fair and above board dealing, like it is in the entertainment industry. So why don't you kind of speak to, you don't
First
agree with
of
that?
all, in entertainment industry, above board, like the stuff I've seen, like when we're partnering with a Hollywood agency, like the standards aren't high. I'll give you that.
Let's just say legal and somewhat regulated, at least in the state of California.
Yeah, let's go with that. Yeah,
it's better than what we have, Barry. Okay.
As far as I can tell, the joke is this is where actually esports has caught up to the real entertainment industry. Guess what? In the entertainment industry, there's plenty of contracts wouldn't be held up in court and fuck you up the arse completely and just make the guy who's your agent take all your money. The point is they rely on the same thing a small esports org does. You're never taking them to court. You're so desperate to get your foot in the industry, you'll take that. And like, by the way, if people don't know, even even mega celebrities like people like Prince and stuff weren't onto like the legit deals until like the latter half of their career. Like you don't know how insane some of those. So like esports isn't the sole corrupt one there. One thing I want to ask though, Barry, talk a bit about an agent angle, but when I want to set the baseline with, can you give us a sense of like what's a reasonable fee that an agent in esports charges a player?
I mean, it can be anywhere from 5 to 15%.
There's a
like
cap
the
in
player's
California on it, right?
There is a cap on California. I don't remember if that's changed.
That's interesting in itself, dude, because I'd heard from a source when he was potentially in this scenario, I'm not saying he did, if he had acted as an agent for some of these players, the numbers I was hearing as to what he might be charging as a fee, some of them went way above the 15% you just said.
Yeah, I mean, I think from what I understand, 15 to 20 is the cap. I don't remember what the exact regulation was, just because I don't set our rates at our agency.
Yeah, just wanted
we are licensed with the state of California, and we have to show them our engagement agreements with talents. We have to show them what rates we're charging, and then they have to approve on it, and then they give us our certification, essentially. And the thing is that like I think it differs from like different kind of industry, because like in sports you always hear like, oh, it's like 3%, but they're also making like, you know, 400K deals. $400 million deals over like 5 years. So it's like a little bit, the scale is different, but it's also like, it's 3% on their like player contracts, but then it ends up being like when they do their endorsement deals and stuff like that, that's a different percentage.
Yes.
So the percentages change all the time. Right. So, but yes, like the state of California that has like a certain cap. Like I said, I just don't remember off the top of my head what it is.
Yeah.
I think the thing I wanted,
Peter Zhang should have just rocked up with one of those esports certification things. Like, what are you talking about? I am certified to work in esports.
I mean,
jokes on you guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, damn, like got me right there.
That would be the cat. He caught you. Cat 22.
Oh, good. But the thing I want to talk about is like how players end up paying their agents, right? Because it can come in like a bunch of different like kind of methods. Because so one way you could do is if a player set up an LLC. Then what you could end up doing is that have the team pay the agency, and then the agency reroutes that to the players. And then what ends up happening is that there's an actual precedent for this through sports, especially with like endorsement deals. Because especially if there's like a big package deal with like a bunch of different like talent together, then the media, like the brand will pay the agency that did the deal, and then they distribute out the money to the talent as they're owed. So there's like a precedent for like that kind of method of doing it, and there's a huge paper trail, and like usually like you can do it that way. The other way you can do it is the player receives the money directly from the team, and then after that the agency invoices them, and then there's like a receipt, there's a paper trail for that. There's another one that I've seen, and I honestly don't know if it's legal or not, is that you get the team to pay like a percentage to the player, and then you have the team pay the percentage to the agent. And that one, I've seen people do that, and I don't know how legal that is. I also think it creates an insane amount of like complication where there doesn't need to be, because the paper trails get mixed up. And like
that looks like a tax loophole if you sort of assess it, right? Yeah.
Because it's based off of their income. Like they get tax based on full income, and then it looks weird.
And to describe this, like I'm represented by WME, which is one of the largest agencies in the world. And the way that when they get me a deal, what happens is the client pays WME, and then WME takes their cut and then pays me directly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how it is. That's how it's always been. Every agency I was with WME for a time. For some reason, they deemed you more marketable than me.
I'm just going to say, Richard, this show has no sponsors. I will just say the show has no sponsors. So
there you go.
I didn't set that up.
Actually, fuck you, WME. On behalf of
I also used to be represented by them as well. I also don't like them. So
but I like the same for me.
There's actually one more that I remember, and I know this one is 100% illegal. Is when an agent essentially negotiated a team and essentially like carved out a signing bonus for the player, and then they pocketed the signing bonus and then didn't charge a player anything else. So what ended up happening is a player was like, oh, wait, I'm not paying this agent anything. And then they feel like they got this agent service for free. But all they had done is just pocket the signing bonus. And that one annoyed the hell out of me, because it created this weird perception that like players are like, oh, I don't pay, this guy is not charging anybody like anything, but I have to pay you, like go away. And so it's like, it created this
Right.
weird situation.
One thing I want to ask you, by the way, is because this wasn't one of the options, right? In CSGO, one of the things that changed a couple of years ago, I heard that there was agents where what they did instead was, instead of taking like a percentage like monthly or whatever, they just took a percentage of the total deal. So say the deal was a $2 million deal, they just took their percentage, I think sometimes at the beginning, and then is that actually, can that be done in California?
That's
okay?
Well, that's valid because the thing, it's weird, right? Because is that like, let's say the contract was for $200,000, is that 200,000 you're getting 100%, like you can't get cut? So for a fact you're going to make $200,000 in guaranteed money. If that's the case, then you can charge up front because that person is going to make that amount of money. Or if your engagement agreement is set up in a specific way that like we do it off the contract amount, regardless of whether you complete the contract or not. Right? It really just depends on the contractual agreement that the agent has with the player or the client. So is it shady? Yes, but if the client agreed to it, then like who knows, right?
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing where like things become like where I would draw a line on is whether if it was like guaranteed money or not, because it feels bad to me to take money like that. But I have ethics and people don't. Some others don't. So
by the way, even though I jokingly referenced it earlier, I do feel as though all people are going to care about is like, what did he nick the millions? Is the grandma story real? To me, because fans don't understand conflict of interest, fundamentally why they're an issue. I think they're going to skim over why this agent part's the big deal. Whereas to me, I actually think amounts of money aside, the agent part, if it's true, is the most disturbing part because essentially you're just manipulating a bunch of young people, in this case, who don't even speak the native language of the people they're dealing with. Yeah,
you're dealing from both sides.
Yes.
You're dealing from both sides of the table. And then the example I can give is essentially like in the traditional entertainment world, there was this huge Writers Guild strike against like the agencies.
Yes.
And the main reason a couple of years ago. And the main reason they were doing that is because some of the agencies were actually setting up production companies. And essentially they were hiring writers through those production companies, but they're also representing those writers. So they were actually on both sides of the table. So and then obviously the agencies claim that we're not actually it's a separate entity. They do everything, we're not actually pulling the strings on both sides. But how can you verify that, right? Like how can you ever verify that when the link is there? So if you look at this situation, like the allegedly Peter is negotiating on behalf of the org, but then he's also helping the player get the best deal possible from the org. So he's not acting in the org's best financial interest, and technically he might not even be acting in the player's best financial interest. Or he could be looking out for both because he knows the budget and whatnot and can get what's fair. But it's not a good look either way.
Dude, I even thought the crazy thing about this case is I've never heard of a case this bad, because usually it's that you pick one of the parties and you agree to fuck the other one. So you're either on the player's side and you secretly help your mates get more from TSM, or you're on TSM's side and you go, fuck it, I'll wreck these players. It's the first time I've heard of someone go, why don't I fuck everybody? Which I guess is sort of the TSM philosophy in some ways. That's crazy. Because I think the chance of getting caught surely had become enormous at that point,
Yeah, I mean...
You got no one on your side.
I think in general, we're definitely due a crucible on where agents and orgs acting as agents. There's I talked about this a lot back during the Tfue phase situation, and for me, again, just full transparency, I was going to be called as an expert witness in that trial, which is mental, but whatever. Just so people know. But I really was all in on the idea that if what FaZe did with Tfue was blown up wider and it was proven they were acting as an agency, we've got a problem in fucking California with all these League of Legends organizations and what they're doing with influencers and what they're doing with players and everything else. It would have changed the face of esports forever, but they settled. So now we've just got to wait, and there will be another Tfue. That crucible
of course.
I mean, the amount in question for the Tfue case was close to 1 million. And so I thought it was actually gonna go all the way just because the amount of money, but at the same time it's such bad PR and there's the weird legal liabilities.
Yeah.
It's there the talent agency the the weird thing about the Talent Agency Act, the TAA, is that it's supposed to it's set up there to protect the talent from corporate entities. Essentially, it's to protect the little guy. And there's another corollary to it was with like there's a Sport Athletes Act. I don't remember what it's called. I used to know this a lot better. But and that was supposed to essentially protect athletes specifically from being represented. Like it pretty much says the employer cannot act in the interests of the athlete, in the financial interests of the athlete. So like that was a big thing, and you can kind of like extrapolate that to the rest of the entertainment industry, but like it's weird because it's specifically about athletes.
Yeah.
So and you have a lot of orgs where like that's why like orgs essentially had these weird like agency clauses almost, but then that's why all the orgs started to spin off media like these agencies as like a part of like underneath the umbrella, or sometimes even like not part of the umbrella as like a separate company.
And that's why I'm bringing this up, because the next point I wanted to get to is, sure, it's bad, maybe, unconscionable if it turns out that yes, this coach rather was sent to China to scout players on behalf of the organization, recruit players on behalf of the organization, negotiated their contracts for them while working with parameters set by the organization, thus ensuring potentially both parties get fucked on the deal. Honestly, that's bad enough. But then TSM owns its own agency and represents Icon and represents players.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Through that agency.
I didn't want to be the one to bring it up. So.
Yeah, one of the things that has to come out about this, and we can talk about this through the lens of the NA LCS Players Association, one of the demands that needs to be set for the bare minimum in the League of Legends ecosystem has to be that orgs cannot own agencies that represent players that operate within the ecosystem that employs the players.
Yeah, you know the funniest thing is that like when Evolve was first starting, a team accused us of being owned by another org, and we had to actually go to the Overwatch League at the time and show them our papers, essentially showing that this other team does not have any ownership in our, like, we had to show them our articles of incorporation and everything. Like we had to jump through all these hoops. And the reason why those teams accuse us of it is because they're doing the same thing. So it's essentially they're just like,
and by the way, there was precedence with this, because remember that when Alex Garfield's agency was bought by Twitch, and when EG and Alliance were bought by Twitch, and then Twitch was intending to form an agency, it was a massive conflict of interest, because basically Twitch itself was then owning esports teams and potentially making preferable deals for those teams and for the players on those teams. And that's why the owners all went up in arms about that, 6-7 years ago. And so, yeah, to your point though, it's funny because it seems like what TSM and Reggie got mad about was that it was Peter Zhang dealing on both sides of the table, when it should have been Reggie dealing on both sides of the table with the fucking agency Icon that TSM owns that represents some of the players on the TSM roster.
I actually wonder what happens with Icon when they because I understand the need to spin off an agency to set up the brand deals for the players, but then the issue comes when they redo the org deals. I've always wondered how they handle that, but
This is it's an area where, unless they are forced to, these companies of their own accord will not behave. They have shown that consistently. If people don't even know, there was even a story that touches on this slightly in CSGO, which if people don't know, there was some commentators at ESL who went freelance, but then ESL operated as their agent to work for tournament organizers, not called ESL. And you know what?
And then took a cut of that money.
You're not going to believe this. I heard a few stories of where someone wanted to work for an event and the event wanted them to work for it, but ESL couldn't figure out the deal. And they didn't end up going to work for a rival of ESL. Well done, guys. Like, people have got to fucking clue up to this stuff. They've got to figure it out. Like, it's not good for anyone. I mean,
the issue for the longest time in esports was like nobody with the actual like work experience or training. There just weren't enough people that had that experience, that understood the scene.
It's
that
the
was the
argument as
biggest
to
issue.
why in the early days I didn't have a problem with the Esports Awards having people on the panel who would inevitably be nominated for awards. Because as you say, like, well, who else is going to vote for the awards then? There aren't any other experts. Unfortunately, the experts are the top people in the industry. So,
I mean, I always thought the Esports Awards was a giant like industry.
you never
circles,
win
right?
whatever in any way, so don't worry about that. So yeah, you don't know.
Yeah,
You're
we did win one. We did win one. First one.
Yeah, we'll find out who you fucked in 10 years.
On the panel of that circle jerk. I love that circle jerk. So just want to, again, just full disclosure, like, no, it is it. All awards ceremonies are
all industry awards are circle jerks.
By definition. This one's definitely had some issues. I kind of stick around to make sure it doesn't have as many. Thorin obviously pieced the fuck out and scorched the earth on it. Fully respect that opinion, you know. But yeah, I'm very much in on that circle jerk and gunning for a third award this year with reporting such as the stuff we're discussing now. So I've literally said, by the way,
to vote for Richard Lewis, fans.
I will just say, Richard, it wants me to emphasise those unconnected facts.
Yeah,
unconnected
no, that's the worst part. I have to like this.
You know, I'm going to stick around for him. By the way, coincidentally, up for Journalist of the Year again. Might go for the 3 people. What?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Yeah. So no, but here's the thing I'm going to do, Duncan, right? I reckon I'll do reporting this year, which will absolutely guarantee me the 3-peat. I'm going to get up on stage. Right, they don't know this yet.
For real, if anyone hasn't figured out, after that first award, the only reason he now wants future awards is for that stage time where he gets to do his speeches, and he's just
can't stop me.
Yeah, exactly.
This is the one. This is the one where the mic gets pulled down, no doubt. I'm going to get up and I'm going to basically condemn the entire industry for being addicted to blood money.
Pulling the hard drive off the shelf and then you're just going to like plug into like some projector. Is that what you're going to do?
Also, Duncan, I'm going to do that, like that Jeopardy guy, and he got called a white supremacist for holding up the number 3. So that's 6 months of hell unleashed on the internet, which I am erect. I am tumescent thinking about it.
Oh, you're going to get another very sternly worded Kotaku article written.
Yeah, I can't wait. Can't wait. Which bum is going to write that one? But look, so just reeling it back in and not talking about myself, which I love to do because I'm a narcissist. Is obviously the player investigation that's the player association investigation, I should say. It ties in with the previous episode because obviously we had them on just previously, and they've tweeted about this and they've said, I've got the tweets in front of me. The LCSPA was made aware in recent days of the circumstances that led to Peter Zhang's removal from TSM. An investigation is underway to ensure all players are adequately protected and supported. That was on their official Twitter. And then Philip Aram, again, I still can't get over his name being Aram and him being involved in League of Legends, but whatever.
Is it pronounced Aram?
I mean, it is now. It is now. Yeah, he obviously was on the show. He was the representative, and he did his own tweet, and he said, "This is a difficult situation to comment on publicly at this time, but our number one priority in this or any moment of controversy is to keep player well-being at the forefront. We must make sure each player has good counsel and clarity on their rights and any due recourse." And so the way this kind of intersects with our previous talking point is, first of all, we speculated, what will these guys really do? It looks to be about commercialization of rights, primarily.
They don't have any power is a problem.
Sure, but I mean, I imagine given what they're doing for the orgs and what they're doing for the league and their working relationship with Riot, an investigation will carry some weight. I don't know how much. I mean, Riot are very keen to wash their hands of anything that makes the league or the game or themselves look bad. We know that historically. But I mean, an investigation is going to be underway, and it seems to be very player centric in the sense that if these players have been exploited in any fashion, there could be ramifications for TSM within the context of the league, and that's outside of any Riot investigation. I thought that was very interesting.
The most that NAPA can do in this case is to verify the stories of like how many players loaned Peter Zhang money, right? And beyond that, I really don't know what else the NAPA, like the Players Association, can do because they don't actually have any teeth.
They have no jurisdiction, right?
No, it's not that they don't have jurisdiction. It's just an organization that collectively is there to represent the interests of the players, but they're not an actual union. They have no official way to force the league or the teams to bargain. Like they don't have any way to do that. Like it's just what the most they can do is like educate the players, and then the players are like, oh, we must this is like some, this is something that 60% of us believe in.
I mean, they could theoretically do things as like in the future require that all agents are registered in the state of California, so at least there's some level of accountability, right?
Here's the thing is that I suggested that in the past to the Players Association. This was before Philip Aram, Aram or whatever. I don't even know how to pronounce it anymore now. It's just stuck in my head. But I suggested it before, and then the reason they didn't want to do that is because they didn't want to be seen as like the people that judge who is competent and not, because they didn't want to be beholden to the fact that they're the ones setting the standards. So
I think just you don't have to have a list of agencies, but you should at least require, because right now the problem is that we know, Barry, that it's not just about China. There have been tons of shady agents in Korea as well, which you can tons, right?
A great article from Lasso and on Inven.
I even think this is probably an aspect that's missed in that sense, though, Monty. People don't know it. This is actually standard practice. Like, typically, you get players, even famous players, and their agent is like a friend of theirs who speaks English, or their brother or cousin. Like, it's very rarely like a very professional setup, I've found in many cases.
Yeah, and I think you could at least set a barrier to entry and also enforce a level of accountability by at least making sure that there's some sort of corporate entity within the state of California that you could take legal action against, right? That's not just some random guy in China or another country that's going to be very difficult to hold to task if necessary. And also have these agencies then have a relationship with the LCSPA in a way that, the LCSPA can at least like minorly vouch for them, or in theory say that they've met a minimum standard in order to represent the players. And to me, that seems like an extremely reasonable approach.
And it is, because Hal Biagas did that when he was the NAPA. When he was leading the NAPA, he actually asked for like meetings between like, hey, I know these people are like these are all agents in the scene. Let's all get together and then let's all like kind of talk about some of the common issues that you've been seeing. And so he used to actually he did it he did like twice, and it was like, and the PA was only around for like 2-3 years at that point. And then so I actually don't know if the current iteration of the NAPA has done that, but like it's something that they're cognizant of, and it's a great way for them to get, because the players don't, like, some players definitely understand like what's going on in the contracts. They read the contracts and they know the nuances of it, but like the vast majority don't. So if they want to if the PA wants to be able to talk to the league about contractual issues that like things that the teams are getting away with, or things that teams are trending towards that are very disadvantaged for players, and they want to talk to the league to that, the best thing to do is talk to the agents. So like I agree, like they used to do that. But with like COVID and everything, it's kind of a lot harder to get everybody in the same room, besides like, on Discord, I guess.
I've even heard, by the way, like to me, unfortunately, because it's coming from China, or it could be Korea, like Monty says. I did plenty of stories back in the day. This even scenario isn't unusual for that region. Like, I've heard stories where you're inquiring, like, is this player available you want to sign? And the agent basically just straight up says to the team in the West, like, whichever of you bribes me will get the player. Like, it won't even be the player who chooses. I'll sort of tell him where he's going. And our negotiation will, like, obviously they don't phrase it that way straight up, but like that's basically the gist of what they would say,
Yeah, that's happened. That's definitely happened.
There's also other practices that the LCSPA could potentially enforce that would, especially with foreign players who don't have English as their first language, to help out. So, for example, they could require all teams to submit player contracts in the player's native language. And there are tons of legal services, by the way, all over America, but especially in big cities like LA, that law firms use to get certified translations done of legal documents. They're very expensive to do this, obviously, but it's a very common service that you need. And that could be a requirement that the LCSPA puts down when foreign players are coming over to the United States, to make sure that they have a complete understanding of the contract within their language, which seems like another thing that probably should occur.
Or they have a translator that has, understanding of contracts on retainer that they just refer players to. or just say provide services to. Like that's the point of the PA is to like provide.
I think the teams could provide a translated document. Like they're not poor. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, it's just shit. Like talking to some of the owners, like you would think that they're eating, they're living paycheck to paycheck. So I don't know, man.
To be fair, I would just get it translated myself and not trust their translation. Again, bit of a cynical take, but might save you millions of dollars.
No, it's an independent. They use independent. They could use an independent agency.
Yeah, the joke is Reginald would just use fucking Peter Zhang's brother, wouldn't he?
Just translate. That's good enough, right?
Yeah, and look, so in regards to the investigations that are going on, so you've got three, from what I understand. You've got the Players Association one we've just discussed.
Why is Reginald catching more cases than fucking old school Roethlisberger? This is mental. He's just got like 3 investigations going at once. Like,
no, TSM,
it's mental.
TSM are doing their own, and from the language, by the way, they've said it's illegal investigation. I imagine a fact-finding investigation for any potential legal action they want to enact down the road. And then obviously, again, my sources have indicated that Riot has started to interview players as well. So, you are now, which is weird because, like I say, as we'll get to, the commissioner has said this is an internal issue. And it's definitely nothing to do with gambling or match fixing. Absolutely not.
Well, the speculation was that, right? So they're just trying to shut it down. But
let's just do that now, Richard. Let's do this segue now. Let's talk about it. Yeah.
So I've got the comment in front of me, of course, because I definitely want to get into Reddit insanity, because anytime I report any news pertaining to League of Legends, it is
trying to give yourself more psychic damage here, bro. Like
no. Yeah, listen. Well, it's just that there is a really seriously disturbed person that we need to sort of talk about, which we'll get to.
Richard is a psychic, and I don't mean me. So.
Yeah. Well, I have to be. You're a journalist. Obviously, I am. Obviously, we're all fucked up functional alcoholics. We have to be. It's like, I will tell you the truth. Kill yourself for telling me the truth, but the truth helps you. Kill yourself. Kill yourself. Yeah, that's the life of a journalist.
The esports equivalent, Barry, of that Jesus meme where it's like giving like the hardest battles to his best soldiers. That's what he's doing.
Gotcha.
There you go.
But anyway, yes, the comment. Hang on, I'm just bringing up the link. I've got like.
Wait, who's esports Jesus if like Richard is the greatest soldier?
Now, listen, I do often compare myself to Christ, and I've realized I've now started a podcast called the Esports Gospel as well. It is getting out of control. I need to stop with the biblical stuff. Anyway, Jackie Felling on Reddit in the thread about Peter Zhang's initial firing 3 days ago, prior to my report, said, "This is nothing to do with match fixing. This is an internal team matter. I'm not making a statement from Riot at all. But I don't want people to think this had anything remotely to do with match fixing or betting, which it does not. Again, biblical, deny it 3 times. Anyway, so here's the problem with this. So first of all, this was obviously 3 days ago now, and this is slightly over, and this is, this is at the inception. No investigation has been completed at this point, by the way. Not Riot's, not TSM's. Certainly not the Player Association one. My reporting hasn't even been concluded, and yet, in her capacity as commissioner, she has felt compelled to take to Reddit. By the way, if you've got something to say, if you need to rebuke a line of thought about your product, do it in an official capacity and stop commenting on Reddit. This is 2022, current year. Can we all professionalize this garbage fucking industry? No,
do it on Twitlonger instead, like a real
exactly.
person.
Yeah, this is worse than a Twitlonger.
Dude, even that part she said there, like, that's the definition of having your cake and eat it. Using my official account, I am the commissioner. I'm not going to speak as the commissioner.
Yeah, I know, and I want to address that as well.
But then I'm going to tell you something that only the commissioner could know and speak. It can't be both. Yes. If you're speaking as a private citizen, how the fuck do you know about an investigation that hasn't been finished? If you're speaking as the commissioner, you're by definition speaking on behalf of Riot. That's the way that works.
And let's be absolutely clear here. You're doing it on the subreddit that your company has massive influence over, with flair that you get specifically for working for that company, proving you're a representative of that company, right? And here's the thing. I just need to explain this to all the morons out there. putting opinions on my own in your Twitter has never protected you in any legal sense, in any real sense. And if I was to go on Twitter tomorrow and say something absolutely outrageous, Deserto would fire me, whether or not I was doing it in a capacity as editor-at-large of Deserto. That welcome to the real world. Why does it work like that, Richard? Americans chose this. This is your world. We just live in it, don't we? You fucking cretinous Americans that have made the internet an absolute fucking hellhole just to operate it. You chose this. So guess what, Jackie Felling, as an American representing an American corporation on an American website on the American internet, you are held accountable for the shit.
Wait, so represents a Chinese corporation.
Well, all right, fine. One and the same, unironically. So yeah, fuck them. So, no, you are commenting. You absolutely are unequivocally commenting as the LCS Commissioner. There is no caveat you can add that will change that reality. And then on top of that, just the fucking, like, so what are you saying? Are you doing an investigation? Are you not doing an investigation? Have you gathered all the facts of the investigation? You seem to have all the facts at your fucking disposal, right? Because you are saying it absolutely is not this thing. What happens now, by the way, if these investigations, actual investigations, including TSM's own investigation, come out and go, yes, we've ascertained that the debt does pertain to gambling. The LCS Commissioner has said in official capacity in a public setting that absolutely that isn't true. You have now contradicted their findings preemptively.
Technically, it wouldn't be a contradiction because if it was just gambling in general and not like, match fixing.
That is betting.
It's the problem, Barry.
Because the commissioner coming out and talking about match fixing is match fixing regarding TSM's game.
It has nothing remotely to do with match fixing or betting. That is unequivocal that it cannot be to do with gambling. There's no other way to interpret that. I'm a specialist in language. Unless betting means something different to placing bets. and gambling.
Is betting around TSM's games if you're talking about matches.
No. Because otherwise it would be to do with betting on fixed matches. That would be the appropriate language for that.
Yes, but we've also established that not everybody puts out
might want to think about little things like that. Might want to think about language when you comment in an official capacity. Match fixing or betting suggests that it's nothing to do with gambling in any way, shape, or form. There is absolutely zero possibility to rule that out at this moment. That is a garbage statement. She shouldn't have made it. And I certainly hope Riot higher-ups in the D20 or whatever they call themselves take a long, hard look at that. A commissioner should not be publicly commenting on ongoing investigations in any capacity, let alone to deny potential lines of investigation.
The way I took it, and I generally have softer takes because I'm a soft person, but is the way I took that statement was essentially that like there was a lot of speculation on Reddit and about that it was because of match fixing. That's why they fired him, because the implication was there was like financial, like some wrongdoing, and he was fired. So if there was a lot of narrative around that, and probably as the commissioner, which goes back to your point, maybe she got like because the league always is going to ask like, hey, you publicly fired this coach for some crazy reason. What's going on here?
You will notice Jackie Felling did not come into the LS thread when people were speculating it might be a sex crime. So fuck her and fuck this line of argumentation. She shouldn't be commenting in an official capacity until the findings are gathered. Yes. This is a basic in any form of investigation you would do, not just legally. With, again, talking as a trade union representative, I would absolutely nail a company to the wall for this.
Barry,
and I would win.
Essentially, what she's saying,
you're right.
Essentially, what she is saying goes like this, Barry. It isn't match fixing because TSM told me it's not for match. So now we're just believing them at just face value what they say he's been fired for. That's why it's ridiculous, Barry. There has been no investigation. You can't say anything, and that's so. And as Richard said, it now looks really bad every time you didn't go and say it. That means every time you ban a player for conduct and they've said naughty things, but you don't say what, and every fan goes, "Is it the N-word?" Every time you don't go and say explicitly it isn't, you wanted them to believe that. That's why you have precedents. Like this, you should know this in the legal world, mate. It's why it's very dangerous dangerous when you set a precedent. You have to apply it consistently. And then the other thing I would say is this. There's an elephant in the room no one's thinking about here. Why would she rush to a thread about TSM and say it's not match fixing? Because they've just had the worst split ever for a team like TSM, in which I guarantee people would have been thinking after the first match, the second match, the third match, you'd be thinking they're going to win one of these eventually. So the odds would never be better for any LCS team than those first games that they lost in the LCS. That is where, if you have a Chinese betting ring, you make fucking millions of dollars. Imagine what the odds would be when TSM plays, like, in theory, on paper, the worst team in the first game before their 0 and whatever, Barry. Like, at that point in time, that is, you will almost never, with a massive org, be able to get odds like they must have been able to get at one point in time for them to lose. And then they did lose. And not only did they lose, mate, they lost loads of times, to the extent that, dude, we're doing talk shows where we don't even know this, and everyone's going like, how can they even be this bad? That could just be a pure coincidence, but you got to at least wonder, right? With the circumstances and the timing, it looks really bad. You know?
It's also the fact that he was borrowing money from the players, which could have been used to bet on matches. And if you know the results or you have insider information, this is what people do sometimes. They borrow money from other people.
Accounts. If he transfers to their accounts, that's the payoff. That would be the payoff if he'd done the match fixing. Oh, sorry, I get to pay you back this money that you took from me. You and they go. That's how you do it.
Look, I don't think this is a likely scenario, but it is absolutely impossible to rule this out.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Like,
look, and I'll add as well.
If this was like Cloud9, who's the top team in the league and won most of their games, it would be way less likely it was match fixing, because in this case, he'd have to fix with the team that lost. But because TSM is an enormous org and did lose loads of times, and by the way, predicated upon a bunch of Chinese and Taiwanese players, no one knows. No one knows. That's why they were bad. So the whole thing, unfortunately, if you're just looking at it with a cynical eye, looks from the outside really bad. Unless someone runs in from an official capacity with a riot fucking tag and goes, "Don't worry, it ain't match fixing. We can all go to sleep, fucking safe and sound." Reggie didn't do it.
Look, Richard, I totally agree with you. She should not, like, if you're gonna make a statement, do it in an official capacity, right? Especially when you are a known representative of like a certain like organization, right? It's like if you're gonna, whatever you say, even if you say like, I'm not saying in official capacity, people are going to take it as if it came from official capacity, with the way everyone's kind of saying it's not about match fixing, guys. Like, this person said it, she's the commissioner, right? Like, so like, I agree that she shouldn't have said anything until like things were like very clear, or at least said it in an official capacity, that like, so that you're putting some skin in the game, right? Like, you're actually like making a strong statement. But like I said, like the way I took it was that they were trying to make sure that she knew that it was not related to that, and wanted to be very clear that it wasn't.
So that's problem number one. She does not know. She absolutely cannot know. TSM can't even know at this stage.
Yes.
So
she investigation has not been done.
No, but forget that, right? Let me right. So for people who don't know, I feel absolutely qualified to talk on this particular topic. I have an extensive source network for dealing with fixed matches. I teach a course about esports integrity at a university. I fucking speak in front of people that include law enforcement officials. I've got former intelligence agents in my source network that are getting increasingly interested in the corruption in esports, that use me as a resource and read my articles and know who the fuck I am. Like, there's not many more people equipped to talk about match fixing here. So let me tell you about the pathology of a typical match fix and how it will work, right? So when the fix is in, the circle, the betting circle, the group, usually, by the way, ring-fenced off from a mafioso type figure who has influenced the players in some nefarious capacity, or whether or not the players are willingly giving it up in exchange for money, they let the people who are going to profit from the fix know about it. They communicate to them, and they think it's a relatively small, close circle. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But what will happen at that point is you will want to lay your hands on as much cash as possible, preferably untraceable cash, preferably untraceable money from another source rather than putting it from your own, so you can get them. Yes.
Maybe by selling a car.
That's why I changed the word cash there. I realized that wasn't representative.
The obvious joke is Peter Zhang doesn't even believe in crypto himself. Use FTX, you daft cunt. Just send him it through crypto.
And the reason you do it this way is it is imperative that the quicker from learning about the fix you find out about it, to putting down the bet, there are odd swings. Any punter who's bet on a fixed game knows this, because you can look at it, you can track it. If a lot of people bet on the underdog in a close period of time, or whatever, they the odds shift and you get less of a return. And it's typically, if you're betting on the overdog, the expectant winner, those odds shift to a point that it makes future winnings just infinitely small and bigger stakes required to get those winnings. So you will put down a lot of cash and you do it in a short period of time, and typically you'll do it across numerous websites. That's how they work. Now, I'm not saying it was going on, but to rule it out, when literally, if you were to show me a Chinese esports personality trying to get lots of money in a short period of time for surgery for a relative that they cannot prove one way or the other is having it, I'm going to say that is sus as fuck. And the first thing my mind would go to would be match fixing.
So here's the thing.
So for her to rule it out is garbage.
So here's the thing. This guy, from the information we have, could have been acting as kind of a hidden secret agent for the players, taking a cut of their income. Then he's asking these same players for loans under suspicious circumstances, right? That absolutely could be collusion from players that he was not disclosing his full relationship with these players. It is, I think, very unlikely, but it is not impossible that this is all connected to match fixing within the LCS with the players that he was behaving as an agent for. Also, suspicious that TSM suddenly did a lot better right after he was kicked out of the team.
They literally won both games this last weekend, which doubled the amount of games they've won right after he is fired. Again,
no, that is a tinfoil hat theory. I am just saying it's
not a tinfoil hat. It's just a theory, mate.
It's a theory, but
it's nothing tinfoil hat. It's just a theory.
We can't know for sure that this didn't occur because there is a web of hidden relationships that has existed, and the results immediately improve after he leaves. It is at least mildly suspicious.
You're actually making the aliens like hand motion.
I know, but yes, exactly. It is definitely a conspiracy theory, right? But the problem is, until we know what the investigation reveals and the extent of this relationship, it is theoretically plausible.
Yeah.
And also, let's be real. If this was Cloud9, Team Liquid, and the org tells me all this stuff, I would be a lot more inclined to trust them. It's fucking TSM, the org that has lied a bazillion times and about everyone in this fucking channel except Barry, because they just don't really know him that well.
Maybe they have in his capacity as an agent. They might have lied.
If you went back in time, Riot would tell you, of course, there's no match fixing in LDL and LPL.
Oh, of course,
they just banned 38 players, coaches, and managers for a huge fucking, network of collusion. And by the way, guys, I don't know how to fucking explain this to you, but it's all bent. I know, right? Like the amount of match fixing that goes on in esports that's unreported, undetected, but is patently obvious is ridiculous. It's as corrupt.
Remember back in the days.
Yeah, remember how blinkered everyone was. Suddenly there would be Chinese people coming onto a stream, watching it in real time for the purposes of sending the data out to live betting sites in Macau, and you had to agree to that to run the tournament in the first place. And the players are doing these weird things and these weird builds, and oh no, bloody hell, I've just rushed all my probes in and died, and everyone's going, I think this is all perfectly fine. And that was in an esport that had one of the biggest esports match fixing scandals of all fucking time. People are cretins.
Yes.
So to say for anybody to rule match fixing out in any instance where financial corruption is there, it's just so ridiculous. Our industry is corrupt. I could throw a dart into a tournament and probably find a fixed game at random. Absolutely.
I'll tell you a little anecdote that will show you how rabid the appetite for match fixing and betting is in Korea, in China rather specifically. I was once talking to a guy.
People do the same thing, so. No, I'm making stupid.
They don't all land. They don't all land, Barry. We all try them. They don't all land. So anyway, when this person from this betting company was talking to me one time, he was explaining to me, he was actually from the CIS region, another incredibly corrupt betting region. But obviously, like everyone has to have someone they look down on. So he was looking down on the Chinese scene from his perch, which is like, you know, again, that's like some fucking petty mob school. At least I'm not Al Capone. It's like, yeah, all right, mate. But anyway, so this guy told me that even at Counter-Strike events, remember, Counter-Strike isn't even close to the biggest game in China compared to like League of Legends. He said for Counter-Strike tournaments that he'd himself, because he'd just been at one in London, he said that at the event, he actually saw people, and where, because they weren't sponsors of the event, they didn't have access to the betting API stuff, because some other company like his company had the betting API, right? He said Chinese companies would send physical people to just stand behind the players and in real time send like messages of like live updates of things that were happening, just so that like betting companies that weren't included into this could get bets off. Think about how much appetite you have to waste your fucking time doing that. That means this is like serious info. That means you're making big money off this, and that's just a guy going and standing behind. So it's an impossibly corrupt scene, and unfortunately, not only is Riot, I would say, incapable of even investigating this, but you already arrive back to the same reason why I asked earlier to Richard, as to essentially, had Peter Zhang already immediately gone to China? Because the reason that would have looked bad if he didn't have the green card is they can't do anything about it. Like, good luck Riot trying to tell them, like, oh, process all these people for match fixing. Like, it's not as simple as that, guys. It isn't like in the West.
And just one final point on the match fixing thing. In China, you don't get banned for match fixing. You get banned for refusing to fix matches after you have fixed matches. That is how it works. I know this is how it works. Like I've said this before in Dota, and it's true in like Malaysia as well. It's not just an exclusively Chinese problem. The moment you refuse, that's when they go, fuck it then, right? You're out. You are out. You can no longer be compromised, and we're going to ban you for the things that you've already done. And it's just absurd to arrive at a point where we say, yes, these, you know, it's definitely not this. I just can't believe you would do that. I can't believe you would even discourage that line of inquiry, frankly.
If you've worked in CSGO, you know that nobody is fucking purely innocent, no matter how cool they are and how much they've accomplished. Just looking at the coaching scandal we had with all cheating. We had legends, we had major winners do that. We had some people, I can tell you in real life, are cool people.
See you on the next Horseman about that one, Duncan, I reckon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's more coming on that one.
Yeah, just obviously, you know, I know I'm very vociferous in my defense of that, Barry, but you know, I do take your points.
All right.
I understand why she feels compelled to shut that down. I just think it's absolutely, you know, not what I would want my commissioner of my league to do.
You're totally right that you can't not say anything in an official capacity when you're the commissioner.
Of course, yeah.
So it's just don't make the statement. Because you can shut it down later on once you do the investigation. Once it's actually been rolled out.
We're doing an investigation. It's very simple. Like, you know.
Here's the thing, though. Low key, I actually feel like Barry might secretly be the real sleeper Fourth Horseman, because he's the only person that makes the dynamic. So now Monty isn't taking the devil's advocate position. Now it's just pointing on you. So you finally done it. You fixed it. The whole hierarchy's there. Because it's so bad, isn't it? That like in every other fucking chat Monty's in, they're all like, he's such a cynical, bitter, jaded old fuck. And then on these ones, he's just like, I don't know. I think some people might make it and be all right, Thorin. I'm like, fuck them all. Like,
am I just like, what was it, the punching bag? Like, just like,
you're not the punching bag. You have to have a discussion, right? And so sometimes I have to be the good cop, right?
Yeah, of course.
You've shifted the ideological focus of our Supreme Court by coming on here.
Exactly.
Oh God, very topical.
Yeah, very topical. I like it. And look, so there was one other thing I wanted to talk about this. If we're done with the actual meat of it itself, I did want to get into the Reddit reaction. I've got to do it. Are we there yet? Are we all good with that?
I think we're.
Yeah.
I know it's not going to leverage
for psychic damage.
I know it's not your area of expertise, Barry, but I think you were a guest on First Blood way back in the day. So if memory serves me correct, so yes, you have more than an awareness about this nonsense. So obviously, I consider this to be a big and important news story, and I think League of Legends fans should know about it. And obviously, listen, I don't care about it from a fiscal perspective. You get nothing off having an article posted on Reddit these days. It's just another vector for abuse, and that's about it. I mean, it barely moves the dial in terms of traffic anymore, because other social media platforms have risen up and they've got better SEO and all of this stuff. And Reddit is just a garbage AstroTurf shithole. But that said, the main hub for Riot Esports, because they failed in running successfully their own forums, which should tell you all you need to know about the company, really. They couldn't even run a forum successfly.
They destroyed the Dota forums, then they destroyed their own forums.
Yeah, exactly. Incredible in a way. So yes, they basically acquiesced and said, fuck it, I guess Reddit's going to be the hub for all things Riot Esports. Now, I've got history with the League of Legends moderators. Primarily, I
Also
refused
an
to...
understatement.
Yes, primarily the just to give you a general history for newer viewers and Zoomers and stuff. Basically, back in like I want to say 2015, you know, I was doing a lot of articles about Riot and how they were a controlling, authoritative, destructive force in esports, and it felt like a big deal at the time. It doesn't really today because, as I said, all of Reddit is AstroTurf now by political organizations. Everything.
Absolutely.
By the way, guys, if you don't know, I know factually like a bunch of companies that manipulate Reddit, post comments, everything like that.
They charge a fee for it. Yeah,
I guarantee you, Riot is manipulating the League of Legends subreddit. I guarantee you, they are running a bunch of those accounts.
It would be fools not to, in light of how they like to interact with the community. It would just be a logical thing to do, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's the mods, but like they probably don't want it to be the mods because they don't want it to get out. But user accounts and comments,
some power user, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Absolutely nothing would happen. I mean, I think back to reporting that we did on Deserto when basically the Epic Games, you know, kind of subreddit turned out that it had like Epic. They were spiking in exchange for like, you know, rewards. They were spiking stories about the malware that was running in the background and stuff like this. So, you know, look, it's all bad now, and I recognize that. And in hindsight, the type of stories I break now and the type of enemies I'm combating now, when we have like literally a deluge of bloodstained money raining into our fucking, you know, space, I realize
I just like to say it a lot, Richard. It's a new catchphrase. GG for all.
Mate, it fucking is GG for all if you look at recent headlines. But
Absolutely.
anyway, you know, so look, I fight bigger fights these days. In retrospect, it was kind of almost like a petty story, but one I still think was valid. And the mods have always said, you know, we're not influenced by Riot Games. They were literally having meetings with Light to help them discuss moderation policies and people's psychology and stuff like this. And they were doing it in exchange for gifts and status. And by the way, they had signed an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, which most lawyers will agree, not American ones, but most lawyers around the world will agree are essentially an intimidation tactic that you use for employees so they can't say anything bad about your company when they leave. That is their sole purpose. And by the way, it used to be Reddit's rules. You couldn't enter into a contract with a business that you represented on a subreddit and didn't disclose, etc. They changed that rule to basically allow because some fucked up junkie wanted to ban me because they had delusions of being a fucking esports streamer. They're not Reddit anymore. They wanted, so they essentially changed that rule on Reddit and said NDAs are actually fine and NDAs aren't contracts. So I've got previous with the...
They said NDAs aren't contracts?
They don't count as their rule about not having contracts, correct?
Just with their internal rule, he means.
Yes, they essentially changed TOS to make it okay for Reddit volunteers to be in NDAs that they don't publicly talk about and moderate their website for free because Reddit is a garbage company for a lot of reasons. That's just one of them. But anyway, so I've got previous with the Reddit moderators, and as a result, I said all of these things. These Reddit moderators went insane. Things they've done to me down the years obviously include the censorship of my articles on the subreddit. By the way, publicly, they've said this is to financially penalize me. It doesn't. It might have done back very briefly, but it certainly doesn't today, nor would it with the model of how I get paid for journalism. They sent a ransom demand to my editor at the Daily Dot. With they made 4 demands of me, which included never talking about the subreddit on Twitter to get unbanned. They have like stalked my social media profiles. You know, they've done all sorts of fucking like deranged.
There was even a chat you had where internally they were literally like bragging, like, I'm going to try and bait him into something. Like, watch this.
Yeah.
Like, and they were just fucking with Richard, like trying to like antagonize him openly.
Yeah, and I strongly suspect, by the way, one of the biggest lies that's ever told about me was that I like goaded someone into suicide.
Absolutely.
Pretty sure that was a mod burner.
Where it was proven. Literally, there's another example of how silly fans are. It was never even proven the identity of the person who supposedly goaded and killed himself. You don't even know if that person existed or indeed killed himself. That could literally have just been the mod the whole time. It could have just been account user 17894.
And a mod at the time publicly tweeted that. You'll notice their rules about what you can and can't tweet don't hold up. But anyway, like I said, these are deeply unhinged people, and it came up again that this report, I think it should just be allowed to be posted to Reddit. I don't care if it does or doesn't. I think people want to discuss this. But not only did they delete my article from being on the subreddit, they deleted initially deleted the player association saying they were investigating the matter. And I don't know if we can bring this up on screen. Maybe we can just put it in the VOD. They set this sort of, there's one individual is a guy called Kahootie. And honestly, like, if you know the dude, wellness check on this guy for real. Because, like, first of all, there's just red flags all over his social media. If you are talking to the president on Twitter, you're unhinged, like immediate, right? Like, if you think you are, I mean, like, you know, like, yes, Mr. President, do this. If you ever do that, you're out of your fucking gourd. It's been that way since 2016. The other thing
and like that before 2016.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is an issue with this guy in terms of red flags is, like I say, he claims to have been there when I had all this beef with the moderators. You can literally go to the League of Legends moderator page on the League of Legends subreddit, click on the moderators, and look at the year they signed up. He's been a mod for 4 years. He was not there. He was not a moderator. He's fucking mental. He's out of his mind. He's stalking me and lying about me on the subreddit. He is dangerous, this individual. So just want to put that out there. That is the person that is dictating what type of news can and can't be disseminated on that subreddit. But you can see here the Kafka trap he set was they were deleting an official comment from the player association, right, saying Richard Lewis content is banned. And when someone said this isn't Richard Lewis content, it's a player association tweet, they said that post made unsourced claims. The trap being, you can't mention me as a source. So any claims I make in reporting that are even claimed secondhand, if you use me as the source, it's unsourced because I don't exist. That, my friends, is why I just don't spend a lot of time reporting League of Legends, because I have to deal with with that level of insanity. Like, I can't even grasp how fucked in the feed you have to be to operate like that. So there's probably a lot of you that this will be news to.
One thing that I do think's nuts as well is, as you said, the original reason, which actually had a logic behind it, as to why they content banned Richard, just as famously they content banned the site I worked for, thanks to a certain fucking potential drug addict moron with long hair. That's enough of the clues. It still wasn't enough for any of your Zoomers. They're all like, who do you mean? Fucking Chucks? No, not believe it or not. So here's the thing, right? What people might not know is when they content banned him, in that early days, that will mean the site that Richard works for knows they can't get any hits from League of Legends when it was a big deal, right? But effectively, if you ask the question as a thought exercise, who benefits the most from Richard's reporting not going on Reddit now? The person is Riot Games. It's undeniably Riot Games. They don't get any of the scandals Richard reports onto that subreddit, except, are you ready for the caveat? And if this caveat doesn't show you what pieces of shit the moderators we're talking about right now are, it is insane. They have said on a number of occasions, they are fine, though, if someone plagiarizes Richard's work, but must explicitly plagiarize. They are not allowed to link to him in the article that they plagiarize.
Can't even mention me.
If they do that, then they're allowed to put the article up. So essentially, what these mods say essentially is, nothing Riot ever does wrong will ever be more important than Richard Lewis messaging this fucking individual that may or may not have existed. And we will violate every one of our own ethics to get him every time. That's essentially it. Like, the quality of the people. And then one last thing I'll drop in, because I'll always mention this. I know they don't understand it, but I'll always do this. One of the other things the Reddit mods do is they punish you if you speak out about how they're punishing you. And the reason why is because you've spoken out. They're not even smart enough to actually phrase it differently. So what happened was, when they removed like one of my articles or something a while back, right, I just said publicly, not only had they removed it, but on their Discord, a public Discord, the mod that removed it was bragging and laughing about why he'd removed it, and also saying silly things like this. It had like unverified claims, which, by the way, implies everything on Reddit was fucking verified by the Reddit mod. Spoiler, none of it is. is. So anyway, when he did this, all I did is publicly say about public information, a Reddit mod is like making fun of the fact that he has banned me. They contacted me privately and essentially said, if you keep saying things about us publicly, we will have to look at. This is all you need to know. They put look into a content ban about you. Now, if you know anything about Reddit mods, let me explain to you how petty tyrant narcissists work. If they send you a polite message saying they'll look into it, they have no fucking power and there's nothing they're going to do. That's just called, please stop doing what I don't want you to do. As anyone who's ever been banned or had their comment removed knows, they don't fucking warn you up front. They don't have a convo. There's not an appeals process. They just ban you. So here's the problem they have, mate, is I'm never going to let them trap me. I never reply to their DMs, mate. I don't even use Reddit as a website. I don't post there. I don't post comments. You cannot do shit to me when I post my tweets. You can go for it. Good luck. But I'll never reply to you. I'll never give you that ammo. Because actually the thing I learned from your case, Richard, actually was, unfortunately, by trying to respond to them as if you could have dialogue, it's that effectively...
That was the first mistake.
Yeah, they tried to use it all against you. So unfortunately,
what I should have done...
just never done that. If they're going to be corrupt, I just let them be corrupt. And I just try to make sure people know they're doing it.
Yeah, what I should have done and what we all should have done in the esports space is that every time a Reddit moderator tries to like engage with you, you should just recognize them as the fucking tragic entities that they are and like ignore them.
I kind of went from like the TSM coaching stuff to Reddit.
Yeah, well, it's important for this because the story like wasn't. I will say that
in theory, no one on Reddit can see this story if they're a League of Legends fan. It's the joke is the real subreddit it got traffic from was fucking Team Solo, mate. For real, the TSM subreddit does allow it. And they, by the way, they were actually more reasonable in their responses than the bloody real Redditors. That's how insane the world in 2022 is. TSM fans are the voice of reason who want to get real quality reporting out there. Like, I can't handle this.
I will say that at the very least, like this isn't the nexus. Like what's interesting about Riot is that they behave as though the LoL subreddit, like they just pander to that subreddit ridiculously.
Yes.
But the thing is that now at least we're not in a world where, unlike 5-6 years ago, where the difference between getting on the LoL front page, like our LoL, and not being there was like 50,000 views. Now only 2% of our YouTube views come from the subreddit, and the vast majority is just done by fans looking for it on YouTube because the discoverability of the YouTube algorithm is much better than it used to be. And a lot of reasonable people just stopped going to that subreddit because it was so fucking insane, and they didn't want to deal with all the crazy people there and all the stupid comments. So, at least there's other, the Insight on Esports Discord or other people's Discords or Twitter or, the YouTube algorithm. And so it's now not as big of a deal that they curtail this content because it really doesn't generate much viewership anyway, or much readership if you're having an article. But back in the day, it was enormously important, like hugely important.
Oh, and by the way, the punchline on the Reddit story is before they removed it, one of their own mods put it in their Discord thinking it was like notable information, and then someone else who's in different mods removed it. It's like, I love the comedy of errors that always
the new mods haven't been indoctrinated. I mean, basically, as I said, it's typically this one guy. There's another guy called Who's a Kiwi. I mean, both of these dudes, all you need to know about these dudes is they make posts where it's like 5,000 words about moderation theory and fucking, I don't know if anyone saw that Fox News interview where that anti-work moderator went on and fucking did you see this? Well, Google it after this show. They literally, so there's a subreddit called /anti-work, and obviously it's what it says. It's motherfuckers that don't want to work for a living. And unfortunately, this moderator took it upon themselves to go on Fox News in what was clearly a bait interview. And basically was like, yeah, well, I do walk dogs on occasion. And it was a fucking train wreck. And they just met it. That is a Reddit moderator, unfortunately. Like, that was the archetype of moderator. They're all like, I'm going to write a thesis about it at some point. They're like fucked in some way. So it's
You're going to write a thesis about the people that write theses about moderating.
Yes, because I think
he's actually a writer and entertaining personality, so there's already a reason to read it.
I'll tell you why. These are as of yet. Why are they all like that? These are undiagnosed mental illnesses. Social media and our need to interact with it has done untold psychic damage. You yourself said it. Psychic damage. Yeah, exactly. They are psychological mutants that need to be analyzed for future generations to avoid becoming like them. And I think I'm equipped to do it. So yeah. But anyway, so sorry if you didn't get the story, but unfortunately, and by the way, any further updates on this, they will be considered unsourced and unsubstantiated. Yes. But a commissioner going onto Reddit and saying something that cannot be substantiated will be pinned as a comment in the thread. So don't ever tell me that subreddit isn't compromised. If you think that, you're out of your mind. So
also, maybe if you're going to hire someone as like LCS Commissioner who makes Reddit posts, might just want to give him the fucking, like, by the way, don't say Richard Lewis. Like, that would be a pretty easy thing to say, up front.
Yeah, people got banned again.
Oh, classic. By the way, there's the other thing they do.
People got banned for saying my name, yeah.
It's the classic one they do. They ban people who say Richard's name, but then... The reason you don't know that is because if someone else goes, did you just ban that guy for saying Richard's name? Well, then they get him as well, don't they? So what they don't seem to realise, they are right in a way. Most normal people don't know you can actually see deleted comments. If you do know this technology exists, it's like having the They Live glasses for Reddit, basically. It's hilarious. There was one thread on CSGO Reddit, you remember this, Richard, where they just deleted like 100 comments that were about me or something. Like, you remember this when I was at Flashpoint or something? Like the joke is they called like half the thread. Like there was just conversation threads that were just like delete. And you're like, what are they possibly discussing? And then you look, it wasn't even anything like fucking salacious. It was just talking about me or something. Like, it's mental, isn't it?
We just need somebody else named Richard Lewis, or even just like Richard, or have the last name Lewis to just get big in the scene. So
for sure,
just slip through, just dodge it, dip and weave through the barbed wire.
What's wild is there must be loads of people in the UK called Richard Lewis as well. It's not like a super uncommon set of names.
No. Let's hope one does indeed come to esports and deals with all my baggage.
I would love it
if they were a pro player.
I
deal with the baggage of the fucking comedian from Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Because what I would love is if it was a pro player as well, so people would have to keep saying it all the time. That's the way you get around it. You just go, obviously talk about the player. Wink. You know what I mean? Like, it'd be amazing. That would be the comeuppance they deserve, mate. Is there anything else on this topic?
I want to hear Barry's like final words on what he thinks, agencies should do to put guide rails on this in the future, and how we can avoid potential conflicts.
What's alarms going off, by the way?
I mean, agencies can't do anything about that.
All right.
The brisket.
Go on. That is the only shit you'd see Monty smoking in a fucking pool house or whatever. Yeah, it wouldn't be weed. It'd be fucking brisket. Wouldn't it? Oh, I've got a nice brisket going on there, Thorin. It's like, yeah, I'm smoking straight nugs, mate. What are you talking about? Anyway, keep going. No, that's not what I said. Go on, Barry. Go on in.
Yeah, sorry, Barry. Go on.
I don't think there's anything agencies can do, because you're asking people who are kind of dealing to like self-police, and we all know how self-policing goes generally. I mean, like, I think Richard, you brought this up, is like the PA should set up standards for or vet like agencies and say like, hey, this is something that these are people that we've seen their contracts, we've seen how they operate, and they have like the gold star from us. Like, these are people that, can operate in this scene, right? Like at least like set up some sort of accreditation thing. But I don't think agencies themselves can really do anything specifically about it, because the weird part is like, because if, let's say, the thing is like, I've taken financial hits in the past because some other guy is doing something that I just disagree with. Like, I don't think you should be operating that way. Like, for example, like, well, say like negotiating like a signing bonus and then taking that signing bonus as your agent's, like as part of your like kind of like your agent fee. It's like, I don't agree with that. Like, but the thing is like, he obviously got an advantage out of doing it because the players don't think they're paying him. They just think like the team paid for him or something like that. But the thing is like, it really just, at the end of the day, like I always say this, like as the scene gets bigger and bigger, and the amount of money that comes into question becomes bigger and bigger, like maybe 5-10 years down the line, I think you're going to start seeing lawsuits when things go very, very bad. And when you start seeing those lawsuits, then you're going to actually get people like starting to like say, this is a problem, regulate. And like, that's when you're going to start seeing it. But until you have like players getting really screwed by their agents, like really, really screwed, like getting screwed like $2-3 million plus, like you're not gonna, I don't think there's gonna be any real change.
Well, this is an interesting one because obviously, talking about lawsuits, TSM, as I said, I think they're doing fact finding with a view to potentially pursuing legal action. It might even be the case that if that happens,
what damage has TSM suffered though? Like, I mean, reputation, but like
reputation. I mean,
It was implied, as I said, he might have stolen millions from them, Barry.
Yeah, I mean,
No, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah,
if the theory of that
yeah,
was
of
he was
course,
taking
yes,
buyout money, I mean,
there's the
okay.
self enrichment, obviously, but it's kind of crazy to think that again we could end up in that territory, and then obviously I'm not saying the players would do this. It seems to me the players at least want to, the ones that've spoken about it or just what I've heard behind the scenes, the players that might have been affected want to stand by him. But so I don't think we'll necessarily see a player lawsuit. But if TSM file a lawsuit against Zhang and say he did all of these bad things, I mean, that certainly opens up the door to potential litigation from a player who can say, TSM
They could
allowed
jump
me to
on
be
us,
exploited.
co-plaintiffs. They could jump on it, but
Exactly.
I don't think it'll go that far. Because then TSM has to both sides the reason why people settle is because nobody wants all of their dirty laundry going out into public record, because you have to go through discovery, and Peter Zhang can actually both sides can ask for information from the other side, and all of that goes onto public record, and that's why everybody settles everything out. So I don't think it's gonna go that far. I think with I said, with the agent side of things, you're going to the thing I keep saying is and I've said this to a bunch of people, is that we're kind of in, for players, we're kind of in a golden age of esports for players, because the top guys get paid so well and they get taken care of so well, and nobody's gotten majorly screwed over like they used to in 2015 and 14 post. But because we're in this golden age of where players feel that they're safe, they are being taken care of, and orgs do genuinely take care of players for the most part. We're not going to see any big change on that, on that end.
Yeah. I agree with that, and I think honestly what will end up happening long term is TSM will do their investigation. I think there's definitely some fuckery that's gone on here. I think that's unquestionable at this point. Even if it's just even if it turns out that it's just the sword art thing and asking players for loans to pay that back, that's already disqualifying, right? So we're all on that same page. So for me, what I think will end up happening is TSM do their investigation, find that, say yes, the report that came out earlier is in line with our internal findings. That's why we took action. Riot Games is going to then look at that statement and say, well, he can never be an LCS coach ever again. That's probably a given. Now, what it'll do for his career back in China, I don't know, maybe not that much based on how he'll be able to frame it. And maybe he will end up, being a coach and associated with another, Chinese League of Legends team. But I think in North America, I think pretty much he'll be done. I don't think you'll see him this side again, which is, complicated and weird because he is a green card holder, as I said. But, I think all parties will end up being silent. I can even see a world where Riot go, yeah.
It protects everybody to stay silent.
Exactly. And, it's one of those things. It's you see this a lot in esports. Imagine God forbid, imagine if Peter starts talking about some of the shit he's seen in, TSM. What if he's one of the people who feels Reginald's bullied him, and now he feels incentivized to speak about that, and maybe he's got receipts, and maybe there's some fuckery we don't know. For me,
I can imagine they've poached players like everyone has, and he might know which ones.
Yeah,
of course.
So I mean, someone with that level of oversight and that level of influence and that level of trust. Obviously, if there's anything untoward, they know about it because they're essentially a co-conspirator, right? So I think generally what's going to happen is we fired him. He did this. It's out. It's public. He won't be in the NALCS again. But beyond that, no further action. Riot will go, it's an internal matter, and we will mirror the ban. We will not be taking any further action. The player association will come out and say the players don't want to speak, but we've investigated it thoroughly, so we're good guys. And Peter will go back to fucking China and probably get a job in a year.
The player association is going to follow up on it. What do they have to follow up on? There's just nothing to follow up on here. They said they're going to do it, but I've never seen anything come out at the end of it. It's just gonna blow over and everyone's gonna forget about it. like the whole LS thing.
I think put it this way:
in like 2 weeks.
I'll tell you this, Barry, and you know this, mate. The player association would love an early W that shows they're about more than negotiating fucking image rates. So if they do an investigation and a player does want to cooperate and say, listen, yeah, I actually feel really aggrieved and he took my money and I'm fucking very, very upset about it, actually. And actually, I think TSM have enabled that exploitation of me, a player, and I would really like you to sort of publicly condemn them, something like that. I will tell you this for free. They would absolutely love to do it. If there's one thing I've learned about all these associations that crop up in esports, player associations, the Esports Integrity Commission, they all want an early W to give them credibility and validity in the space. And,
they want W's, but they're never gonna burn bridges to get W's. Like, dude, I don't think the Players Association.
Again, I'll respectfully disagree. When we talked to Philip, I mean, he sort of he said to the point, these organizations are kind of a little bit like the enemy to us in a way, and they're going to have to adapt to what we do. Yeah, well,
they definitely are the enemy.
We're all on the same. Yeah, no lies detected, right? But yeah, I think honestly, if they get a chance to turn the screws on TSM and say. Put it this way. Here's one thing that will come out of it. I will bet on this. I'll have a little gentleman's wager with you, and next time I see you, I'll buy you a beverage, right? If I'm wrong. They will get some form of codified agreement that the player that the orgs can't own agencies for players. They will use this incident to parlay to that end goal, one way or the other.
If that happens, like I'll buy a whole case of beer. And then massive respect to the Players Association. Then they've done everything that I've dreamed that they would do.
How's your brisket, homie?
It's good. That was my brisket alarm. I had to go wrap it in butcher paper.
Yeah, it's important, man. You listen. I totally respect it. You should be live streaming that, I reckon.
Actually, my cooking streams would be pretty fucking fire.
Yeah, no, I agree. So yeah, I think we're at the end. I think we've done it. I think we've covered all the angles.
Viewer questions.
You even let me rage for a little bit. Barry indulged that and kept me based.
It was amazing. I haven't I've been like kind of cooped up like for like a year or so, and I haven't seen like outbursts of emotions because I'm just like sitting in front of YouTube and just doing nothing, like vegetating. So
I always bring the heat. I started out slow on this episode. I was a little bit sleepy. I've been up researching this ESIC thing, but I'm in the mode now. I'm there.
Good. All right, let's do the Grog Coin questions. Barry, you can stick around for these and give your thoughts as well.
Yeah.
I'm making that decision for you. So Grog Coin channel on the Inside and Esports Discord. If you want to ask questions, go to the Grog Coin channel. It's pinned there. Do the thing it says. Who is the best interviewer in esports, not counting the Horsemen?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Let me think, because the problem is, unfortunately, that is a classic role, as which you will know that a lot of the people who are good at don't tend to stay in for a long time. Unfortunately, people move on to better careers. Unfortunately, so
I mean, I think Shox is probably one of the best because she gets really like honest reactions out of players, and she gives people like it's a very subtle art when to give people the appropriate amount of like prodding to get a real answer, while also giving them this space to be themselves. And I think she really does that very well.
Yeah, it's really tough because again, you see, there's two different types of interviews really as well, right? You've got those in the moment sideline reporter kind of interviews, right? Which is what we're talking about. Shox. I agree. I think she does it very well.
I wasn't even thinking of that. I'm thinking of what you're thinking of, the sit down one, right?
Yeah, you see. Exactly. And then you've got Frost fucking Nixon, right? You feel me? Where you do like a really long in-depth comment. Exactly, because that's your bread and butter. And obviously, spoiler, I think you probably do it better than anyone else in esports. The Reflection series.
I've done a lot of them, to be fair.
The Reflection series is absolutely masterful work from colleague to colleague. And impeccably researched.
I would say Ashley King does pretty good with the Korean players, because Korean players are notoriously. It's weird to get them comfortable enough to say things that they normally to get past their like kind of natural like instinct to like be PR things. So I think he does quite a good job of that.
The problem is this, right? Is unfortunately, as Richard says, like my bias is towards like the long form, like 1 hour interview we go on. Unfortunately, I don't think there's actually anyone I can think of who's like got enough tenure or done enough that they're excellent. So I'll actually go with the former kind, the sort of post game.
Yeah.
And you know what? This might actually shock people, but I have a totally different take to the CS:GO subreddit in this regard. Even though now I notice they've done like a mad redemption arc turn and they fucking support everything she does. I actually think that Frankie's actually a pretty good post game interviewer, because it's exactly what what those fucking idiots don't want her to do, which I do want her to do. Like, believe it or not, I want her to be slightly annoying in those post-game interviews. I don't want them to all be layups and fucking alley-oops to just give easy shit answers. Even though, yeah, she did obviously like bungle some of the early examples, like the famous one with fucking Alexi B on train. But like the gist of what she was going for was right, guys. It was the idea that you don't just accept like a fucking cliched, like, well, you know, we didn't like try hard enough on that. You don't just take that. You sort of go, you press a bit if you think there's more there. You try and get, by the way, you have to ask a spicy question to potentially get a spicy answer. And a fan doesn't understand this. They still think you're there to fucking sort of like worship the player and go, excuse me, player, like, I know you just lost a game, but no, you're supposed to say to them, you're supposed to be the number one team in the world. How did you go out 9th to 12th? What's happening? Is there going to be player changes? Will there be roster moves? Like, are you going to state that you're supposed to do that? So even though it's what actually has turned half of them off early on, that's actually probably her best quality as a fucking interviewer. She will stick to it and be stubborn in that regard.
And on that topic, talking about those sideline reporters, I guess is the way to call them. It's what they would be referred to in sports. For me, I mean, you know, we've you can see the kind of like through line to how we get to Frankie. You know, you go with Rachel Quirico. She was like an absolute master at it and did some of the most hilarious clips in difficult circumstances. Smix, obviously, after good, that, she was so good, I would say, on E-League when we were working together. She asked a lot of, you know,
very like diligent researcher for that shit.
Deep, yeah. Like beyond what you would ever need to do for that role. And really frustrated if she ever got a minor detail wrong, like really beat herself up about it. You know, she was such a great worker and a great professional. But then obviously, you know, Frankie is of course the absolute successor because, you know, I saw this a lot with Dota. I even felt compelled to sort of do a stream about it. You know, they got mega upset, mega butthurt, you know, that because it's Dota in the Reddit and they're just a bunch of entitled cretins. But, you know, they basically said like, you know, Frankie should never be invited. She doesn't even understand the game. She doesn't need to. All she needs to do is do what you can't do, and that is understand human emotions. Because if you're posting on the Dota subreddit, you've got a fucking disorder, mate. So it's absolutely ridiculous how much they beat her up and the hate she got. It was vitriolic, it was sexist, it went beyond anything I've ever seen in recent times for an esports professional. And it shows that she was doing her job correctly, in my opinion. You have to ask questions that people might turn their nose up and go, what do you mean? Of course we won, you know, or whatever. You know, if you want to get that honesty, that earnestness in the moment, you got to be a little bit cheeky. You got to poke around the edge. You got to poke emotions. I started doing that. I know, you know, like you say, I was one of those guys initially. I know exactly how you motivate someone to get the soundbite.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
All right, moving on. What is your favorite ancient Greek play? You have a favorite? I'm an Oresteia stan.
I need the pronunciation because I don't want to embarrass myself.
I'm a Philistine, so I don't know any.
Joke is, if you actually were a literal Philistine, you'd have a better chance of knowing a bit about Greek.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not your part of the world, so I'll give you that.
Prove myself right there.
It's not exactly your part of the world, so I don't blame you, mate. It's not like it's the most obvious thing people would know about. I don't claim to know anything, by the way, and I even actually have like a fucking A-level in classics, so don't worry.
Shit, man. Why can't I find it? I'll be honest, it's like the only one I've read.
What's the gist of it?
Still, the one where the chicks withhold sex from the dudes to get a better society running.
Sounds like all of them.
Sounds like a romantic comedy starring Matthew McConaughey from the late 90s.
Yeah, before we did True Detective, and we all realised he was like the best actor ever.
It's Liz Estrada, dude.
That's the one. I did want to say,
yeah,
exactly. It's very famous. It's the only one I've read. I'm not massive.
I mean, Aristophanes wrote a lot of bangers. To be
yeah. But yeah, that one. I remember reading that one because I used to date someone who was in
Aristophanes.
Into Aristophanes. Yeah, she said, "Ooh, call me Aristophanes." I used to date. She was studying classics, right? And I was doing a dog shit philosophy degree because that's where I started before I made the switch to journalism.
Esports.
Yeah, and then esports fucked up my whole life. But basically, I got so bored with the philosophy stuff because the lecturers were all pretentious wankers who just wanted you to reinforce their opinions, and all the students were fucking deadbeat losers that, you know, smoke like ultra thin
From the
roll-ups.
esports industry, you'll notice this.
I know, yeah.
People
It's
out the
like-
frying pan into the fire. It's like-
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they were all mega pretentious, thinking they were going to be the next Confucius or whatever. So I couldn't handle that environment. For me, I was very down to earth and kind of like working class guy, you know. So anyway, but I was interested in history, so started basically attending her lectures with her, and studying her course, and was like mega interested in it. And that's when I read that play. So that's a long, long time ago, but it was indeed a banger.
Yeah, he has a good bunch of excellent satire too, like the birds and stuff like that. I actually was in a stage version of the birds at one point in time, so good shit.
Yeah.
Do you guys have any favorite Greek plays? I guess you don't, Barry.
Nope. When you say the birds, I just think of Hitchcock. That's it.
Yep, they're very different. Very different. All right, I guess we'll go on. What are your thoughts on the recent rise to success of industries like crypto/NFTs, VTubers, and OnlyFans? Is this contributing to Zoomers refusing to work, perhaps because they aspire to get rich quickly with minimal effort?
This question's brilliant. Who
Wow.
asked this one?
What's
That's like-
Garbo? Is our
Whoa.
society devolving into degeneracy?
It started out as a Zoomer question and then became a Boomer question. That was
Yeah,
because it
perfect.
had that
It had it
insane line. Like, this guy better actually be satirizing, because if he genuinely thinks that young people don't want to work, you don't understand what inflation is. You literally don't. You're an idiot. You're an abject fool. Like, you don't know how much a house used to cost in like 1950. You don't get it. You don't get it at all, basically. Now, look, certainly they might not want to work, but that's actually an unrelated topic, of course. I would say the bigger thing to me is you can tie this into esports and make it more interesting. Like, the bigger issue for me is I do think these things will actually potentially sap like how competitive the West is in esports. Like, if you could, by the way, the part people haven't thought about with crypto is if that becomes another pump of sponsorship money, there's another reason not to grind 16 hours a day trying to beat Uzi Eye and Faker. Why the fuck would I? If I can make twice as much as they do while having all lols and fucking playing funsy games with people on stream having fun, like that will be the major issue, I think, of those sorts of things. Same with VTubers, all the rest of it. I don't really think OnlyFans had much impact on esports, but whatever.
No,
I think VTubers, VTuber is, I think you're probably going to see more and more major streamers who appeal to people in their teens and early 20s turn into VTubers as they get older, because they will need a way to hide the fact that they themselves are now older,
Right.
to be cool with the kids.
Creepy.
I think that will actually happen. That's my theory. Book it.
This is the idea that's the $1 billion idea, right? Doublelift. You have a stream with an enormous audience. Everyone wants to hear what you have to say, but you don't have any ideas and you can't speak. I'm fucking brilliant at thinking and speaking. Let me buy your likeness that I'll do a VTuber and I'll just appear as you, but with like all sparkling insights and like knowing what I'm talking about.
You're gonna Cyrano Doublelift stream.
Extremes, like holy shit.
That's how we make all the money, Doublelift. All I'm telling you. And by the way, I'll be talking Buku shot on fucking Reggie, Ninja, all of them. Listen, I'll give you a concession. I won't say anything about Lena. That's a fucking best offer you're ever going to get, mate. Hit me up.
Well, not when Lena's his boss. So anyway, yeah, I mean, for me, there's like loads to kind of unpack it. I'll echo Duncan's thoughts. I do feel sorry for all the post-boomer generations, because you have to understand, as Zoomers, you didn't help yourself by making everyone near to 30 and over a boomer, did you? You didn't help yourself out, because let me tell you, I'm a Gen Xer, I think. Is that right? Is that what I am?
Gen X millennial.
Yeah, I'm a Gen X
What
guy.
year were you born?
82.
No, you're technically old millennial. I think Gen X is 80
Gen X sounds way cooler. Fuck them millennials and their avocado toast money. I'm a Gen Xer for life. Fred Durst, I'm rolling. Right, anyway. So I'm a Gen Xer. And we got fucked by the boomers, and we went through all the same shit that that you're going through now. All the same spiel. Just go to university, lol. And of course, for our generation, you didn't get a grant to go to university anymore. Suddenly, it was an absolutely crippling, high interest, permanent student loan that you had to acquiesce to get a fucking education. And on top of that, by the way, the government was telling you must definitely go and get a degree. If you don't do these things, you will be on the scrap heap. You will be obsolete. The government essentially encouraged my generation to get themselves into permanent debt That's what we had, and it's garbage. You get nothing for a degree. Real talk. I think about what I studied and what I learned, and the fraction of it proportionally I use in what has made me money. It's minuscule, infinitely so. Meanwhile, dickheads who were like, "Hey, you go to university, way wanker wanker." They've like got a company that like builds fences, and they're millionaires now, driving Beamers, while I'm like fucking still. Can I have my Reddit thread allowed, please? You know what I mean? So they won the game, right? So I sympathize for all the fucking Zoomers. You know, there was a grift that baby boomers put in basically after the period of hardship post-war, where countries that fought in the war were rebuilding. There was this like unbelievable period, 60s, free love, free sex, free drugs, free everything, no diseases, by the way. We made them. They suddenly came out just in time for the 80s, when you all get ravaged by AIDS, right? Me as a child watching the fucking TV, what's AIDS, mummy? Is it gonna kill me? They're saying it's airborne in Time magazine because no one knew what the fuck it was. So we all got fucked by the boomers. We should all have solidarity to be against the boomers, but you Zoomers think we're boomers. We're not. We were the first. We're probably like the second generation, like the Gen Xers, to get truly fucked by the boomers and pay for their sins. So just want to put that out there. I sympathize.
Know so little about history. They even let them fucking reboot fucking Fauci and not even tell you he was around.
Yeah, season 2 of that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not getting into it.
Season 1, exactly.
I'm not getting into it. I'm just saying. And by the way, the attitude. If you ever want to know, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. If you ever want to know where that insidious thought process has its inception, it's from the original boomers. Because as far as they're concerned, my parents fought in the war. Our houses were destroyed by the bombing of fucking Dresden or whatever. We rebuilt ourselves up. Blah blah blah. Why can't you do it? And it's like, because you tank the fucking economy. Because the fucking monetary system is the largest criminal conspiracy perpetrated on the human race ever since time began, and we all bought into it. So we're all fucked. So anyway, moving on from that. How do I? We won't get out to separate.
I don't know where you're going, Richard.
Yeah, because I was just going to talk about crypto sponsorships, like
while I was doing it. So you know. So anyway, you know, moving on from that and talking about these new vectors for crypto and Bitcoin. When I first heard about it, by the way, I've read an excellent book called Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain recently, and it's reinforced a lot of my negative opinions about crypto and Bitcoin and why it's one big scam, and NFTs are a sort of subset of that. It sounds brilliant on paper, especially for a Gen Xer that's been fucked by boomers, that wants to get away from a monetary system that is inherently corrupt and criminal. But the problem is, it seems to have been set up with those intentions as like a shop front. Yes. But actually not real. It's part of the grift, that appeal to people like me who should find it appealing. We come in and we're the marks. We're the ones who get worked. And unfortunately, when you look at it functionally, in a lot of these cases, it is no different to a Ponzi scheme. And and a reliance on the next useful fool that's willing to value your crypto at something that it might not actually be worth. When you start looking into it and you look at the sort of overall negatives of crypto and NFTs, I don't know how anyone can conclude that it's a good thing to be in. And by the way, I've got a number of friends who are now millionaires because of crypto, and you know, it's all with a nudge and a wink. You know, they all say the same thing. I just love the technology. But what you really love is the fact that a bunch of morons got worked, and yeah, you get to be fucking millionaires. So by the way, story that literally broke while we were doing this episode, G2, and I love you, Carlos, sorry, buddy, G2, who had tweeted about, yes, we know the fans don't like NFTs, but we are putting out our own NFT, and now suing the partner that they put the NFT out for, reported in the Washington Post. You've got to understand 95% of this industry is predatory and garbage, and the other 5% is trying to make sense of a technology and find some practical application for it without any of the answers. By the way, the original people that created NFT said it was just an afterthought, that they did in a spitballing microdose session, and actually they sort of kind of know that it's all garbage to begin with. So I don't know why anyone would fillet the concept. So
it's good if you want to ask a question of like MonteCristo, though.
So listen,
that's all I'm saying.
Buy Grog coin,
but really good.
So,
like
there you go.
These are just my thoughts. So yes, this coming into the esports space, it's like the deluge of skins gambling. By the way, skins were a very early NFT. We just didn't even know what we were looking at. And that was dangerous, and it raised a bunch of emotionally crippled child gamblers. It made millionaires of very bad people. And again, it was a conspiracy that everyone engaged in esports that was predicated on young, vulnerable people. It's a fucking disgrace. So how do I feel about it? Get it all out for me. And just as the final point, and then I will shut the fuck up. Is it contributing towards people wanting to not work and having aspirations beyond their means? Of course it is, because these are young, impressionable, vulnerable people. And when you've got a guy like FaZe Banks who can seemingly do no wrong, despite being a piece of shit, and he's saying, "I just made $300,000 in 10 seconds. Check this out, check that." When you see FaZe being lauded in the esports community, despite some of their influencers doing actual pump and dumps and stuff like this, how can a guy who wants to wear a FaZe hoodie not also want to be like the people he looks up to? Of course he does. So they start going into this spiral and they get in over their fucking heads. I've talked a lot about the mental health deluge we're going to have down the road because of what social media has done to us all psychically, what crypto has done to us. We're going to be feeling that 10 years from now for real.
Certainly.
For real, it is.
All those people who have to keep looking at the phone and they're having a fucking mild panic attack when the number goes down. Oh,
bro,
it's not.
We know about that. We're already
seen it.
That guy who fucking iced himself when in the crypto crash. So listen, man, it's fucking bad. It's dangerous. It's not regulated. And spoiler, by the way, it is definitely a grift, because as we're seeing with the SEC filings and the changes to the SEC and all the big fines that are being handed out, big government is coming. Anything you thought was going to be independent from the government never can be. We live on a prison. We live on a prison planet. Don't think otherwise. There is a ruling class. There is a political elite that control you. No matter how much independence you think you have, and anything that breaks you away from that paradigm will be shut down. And they're doing it now.
Exactly.
I got nothing. I got nothing after that.
On the point of GrogCoin, the nice thing about GrogCoin is it creates our own independent economy, right? And I think the technology is interesting, and there are different ways to use it. And why I like using the GrogCoin is because we are not tethered to a specific platform that can make decisions about the monetizations of our content. I think it's important to have that independence. So I do think there are upsides to it. And I do think the way that Grog is its own economy specifically tied to us, and we provide the value for it, is different than Bitcoin, let's say.
Is it the rally?
If after all
it's
that
on
rally. It would be hilarious though if after all that rant from Richard, like GrogCoin did just low-key make us millionaires though. So,
Oh God!
I mean, for once, for something funny and surreal to actually work out in our favour.
To be like EMF and set fire to it, wouldn't they, on camera?
Yeah, there you go.
I actually do have to go somewhat soon, but we're not gonna get to all the questions this week, but we're gonna have another Four Horsemen very soon, most likely.
So submit your questions.
So here's a good question, especially because Barry's here. Who benefits most from contracts where streamers sign with teams, especially after the Tfue FaZe lawsuit? I thought many successful streamers would see teams as an unnecessary middle management, but I still see some pretty big streamers sign with teams. Barry, you have any insight to this?
80% of the time, 90% of the time, the teams benefit, because the thing is, teams get a lot of these guys. Let's say like you get them at like 2,000 concurrent viewers. So they're like big, like they're a bigger fish, right? But like, and then let's say they grow to like 10 to 20K concurrent streamers, they get gigantic. If they're signed to like a 2-year contract, 2-3-year contract, and like we know like how, like, and I've worked with people like this, they get big. The team doesn't want to offer them what they're actually worth, because if they were independent when they were 10K and then they were like negotiating a contract with an org, they're generally going to make way more money on the base pay. So I think like most of the time the team benefits. I genuinely didn't really understand the economics behind like why teams would want to sign streamers unless they're locking up all of their like kind of the marketing and IP like behind like the team brand. So it's like I think teams don't necessarily understand what they're getting out of their streamers besides like kind of building brand value and brand awareness. So like there's definitely cases where it's like not great for the teams. So where they're like overpaying for talent that they like just isn't going to be drawing really a lot of like fan engagement to the brand, the org itself. But for the vast majority of like contracts with like when streamers sign with orgs, it's the vast majority is bad for the streamer. Like it's just
This way. Oh, sorry, go on.
no, I generally think like streamers should not sign with orgs unless it's like less than a year. They shouldn't be signing on for more than a year, ever.
I can tell you, I've had team org owners just say to me straight up, like, and have like a really famous streamer, and I would think like, why does he stream for your org? And it's like, because guess what, he still thinks that like 30k a month's big money, so that's what I pay him. He doesn't know that I can make 60k from the sponsors for him, etc. And basically the premise was these people just don't know their value, as you say, especially if they're just rising up. They haven't even been big yet, they haven't been with different teams. Like to you, if you go from making whatever like the Twitch rev is to making 30k a month, you'd think, fuck, I've made it. But for all you know, maybe actually with your rise, they know actually they can get, as I say, like 60k maybe in return, and so it just works out for them. Essentially, they profit from you just not knowing what your value is.
So I will say that there are some good orgs out there that will scale it. So what they'll do is they'll offer you, a rate per viewable hour that you have. Like they might like say,
I negotiate on those deals, yeah.
Yeah. So those are good because they actually scale with the streamer, right? And that does happen. And the reason you might ask yourself, okay, well, why would the teams do that? The teams themselves are obsessed with showing revenue. So what they do is they have favorable Twitch deals, right? And you sign on to their Twitch deal basically to get a better rate for yourself. And the team isn't taking a cut of like that subscription money or that ad money, but they want to pass through the money from their org so that they can show it as revenue, even if they are paying 100% of it to you, because that increases the value of the team and the valuation, and they can sell those numbers to their sponsors as well. So even if the team isn't making money off of the streamers, it's valuable because you're increasing the overall revenue of their company. Yeah. And that means that they can then raise money from venture capitalists or sell the team at a higher valuation down the road or sell sponsorships at a higher valuation. So there is a reason that the teams do it, even if they are not making money and scaling, like allowing the streamer to scale. It is valuable to them.
I'm aware of that. I think the issue is just that there's teams that I know don't have deals with Twitch that allow them to do that, and they still overpay for streamers. So it's like I see that happening. I'm just like, do you understand what like the economics are here? Like actually, so but generally speaking, like I said, 80% bad for streamers, I think.
Yeah. So, and it's not malicious what the teams are doing. Like they're basically just operating as a media network and paying the streamers what they would make and then aggregating those numbers, which is just how the media networks work. So it's not necessarily bad for the streamers, but yes, I hear Barry's point.
Yeah. I generally recommend like if you've grown to like 2,000, 3,000 concurrents, like that's usually the break point I see. Like when someone passes 1,000, either they get big really quick or they just die out. So it's like once they get to that break point, it's like you should really just go on your own unless you're like really trying to like secure yourself some sort of stability.
I mean, it is hard though, because it does take a lot of time for agents to negotiate the number of deals that teams have. Like, getting all of the categories that a team might have is going to take a significant amount of time to negotiate that, prove their value. So I do think the teams do offer value.
I mean, I'm definitely a biased source, like on this. So, like, I am not an unbiased person in this kind of like situation. So,
yeah, I mean, look, I think I've seen a lot of like influencer collectives that have sprung up over the last few years that certainly seem to prove that if you get enough people with enough reach on socials, like together, you can sort of bypass having to have an established organization.
I think it's really good.
Like One True King is a good example of this, I believe, with some of the guys that we know. And there's that to me is a very interesting and exciting development, because up until this point, I think you sort of have been a little bit beholden to, you hit that 1,000 that Barry's talking about, and then you need to get picked up by a phase, or you need to get picked up by an optic, or you need, TSM, etc. And that, the collective interest snowballs you.
Yeah, it helps you. Yeah,
it helps you early on. That's why I said don't sign anything longer than a year.
Yeah, but then, as again, come back to the illustrious Tfue case.
But then, like the organization might not sign you because they know they're going to try and blow you up. Come on, there has to be some give and take there.
But I think these contracts need to like at least have some sort of like scaling component to it when you get bigger.
I agree with that.
And a lot of contracts do not have that scaling component.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, like I said, Tfue found that out. You know, he blew the fuck up. And the problem you've got with a lot of influencer culture is it's very ephemeral. You have to strike while the iron's hot. If you don't, you are going to miss a window of opportunity. I want anyone to go and look. 3 years ago, look at all the top Twitch streamers and look at them now. And that is a really, really small window to get paid.
Ninja lived up to his name and disappeared.
I mean, dude, I've
whatever, man. He got the bag, dude.
Yeah,
it's really hard to stay as a children's entertainer. Eventually, you just become uncool, and then what do you have?
Oh, no,
just look at Pee Wee Herman.
He got the bag. I agree.
I
wish I got that bag.
There were some other things involved there, but whatever. No, but the reality is, you know, listen, I've talked to Ninja privately because I'd said publicly, you're just a very mediocre streamer. Enjoy it. This is your moment. This is all you're gonna be. And then he went, got the bag, and blew the fuck up. And he was doing Super Bowl commercials. And a lot of his fans were like, I remember that tweet when you said he would be. I mean, I still stand by. I don't like his content and think it's kind of mediocre. But I've talked to him privately about that kind of framing. And it's like he was very aware about what was going on at that time. He knew this was the window of opportunity. And that's why he worked so much and put himself out there. And trust me, he's very happy with where he is now because, yes,
he can
he's
not have fun.
He's got his life back. He's
Yeah,
got his life
done.
back, and he's set with the money he made. But he did, you know. Listen, he was a hard worker. He was around for 10 years before he blew the fuck up. No
he was
one
a grinder, dude.
Yeah, he was in Halo and everything. And so when people think he was like just a, you know, flash in the pan, came out of nowhere, super success, absolutely not true. He, out of all of the streamers you could say that about, it's not him. So, but trust me, he's in a much better place now because a lot of us in esports, not us of course, but I mean other people, you know, they're not very socially developed. They haven't lived lives, they haven't held jobs, and the pressures that fame and scrutiny apply to their psyche are far greater than people that have lived a life and you know been on a building site with a foreman fucking telling you gotta get back to work or you're fucking fired and you're not going to be able to feed your kids. So yeah, I think definitely signing long-term things is problematic. Because if the org can basically keep hold of you and keep paying you a small amount once you've blown up, that's bad. But equally, orgs offer massive value for streamers and people.
The biggest issue is just generally when you've blown up, but you can't capitalize on your own fame. There's some there's definitely orgs contract situations I've seen where someone's blown up, but they couldn't leverage any of that, and they're still getting paid pennies. So like they could have been making
entertainment though. That's every entertainment business.
I agree. That's why. But the thing is that I don't have like the magic bullet answer, like obviously. So it's like, but I would like to see streamers sign with orgs less. But I also agree that orgs help as individual streamers grow to the monoliths they are. So it's a symbiotic relationship. Like there's give or take everywhere.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry we won't be able to answer any more questions. I got other stuff to do.
Buy Grog Coin.
Buy Grog Coin.
The moon.
That's it. Esports the Lenda Est. Goodbye.